I become a Mecha. I can evolve infinitely. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 1 Girl and Mecha. The Thunderhawk Nebula, the planet Telrus. In the 14th year of the Revelation, the Kind Kingdom, Zenhei City. The main position of the third line of defense, Black Sky. Can pass, can't pass, can pass, can't pass. The girl with white hair and red eyes sat on the bed, wearing a silver functional coat, throwing darts one by one at the scoreboard. Can pass. As the 13th dart hit the bullseye, the girl cheered out of thin air, swinging her long legs back and forth. Dong dong dong. There was a knock on the door. Beiying, General Chen asked you to go to the control room to find him. Come on, come on. Beiying jumped off the bed lightly, grabbed a handful of candy, and stuffed it into his pocket, and ran out of the door excitedly. 2 minutes later, Beiying was furious in the control room again. Didn't you say I passed the test? Why won't you let me drive the Mecha? Beiying grabbed the general's collar fiercely. If you don't let me go to the battlefield, don't let me stay in this iron cage. No one dared to stop Beiying's rude behavior. Although she was beautiful, she had a hot temper and high combat power. People usually had to avoid her. Moreover, Beiying was recruited by General Chen himself, and her status in the dark sky was self-evident. There were a few brave guys who wanted to get close to her, but they were beaten to a pulp on the ring. You passed the combat test, but your synchronization rate with crossing Shan is too low. You can't even fully control the Mecha. Going to the battlefield like this is like going to die. General Chen didn't say anything about Beiying's rude behavior, but just lightly moved Beiying's hand away from his collar. Bullshit. I can't control the Mecha, so why did you give me an A rating? Also, this antique you gave me is the first generation of war armor. If the synchronization rate is low, don't look for the problem on me, look for it on the Mecha. Beiying pointed at the battle-scarred crossing Shan outside the glass, his eyes full of disgust and unwillingness. But neither of them knew that the seemingly turned-off crossing Shan Mecha was in a low-power sleep state at the moment. Noisy. Noisy. It's better not to let that girl drive the Mecha. Yuzaro's radio system heard the conversation between the two clearly. That's right. He traveled through time and space and came to a world where technology was booming but facing a catastrophe. And he became the most favorite look for men. A giant war armor that was 50 meters high, weighing 8,000 tons, equipped with a wrist battle blade, a double-barreled heavy artillery on the back, and a rocket thruster. He had seen snakes, dragons, and sword spirits in books in his previous life, and had heard many stories about driving mechas, but it was still a bit too advanced for Yuzaro to wear a mecha and let others drive it. It was hard for him to imagine that there were two sweaty men fighting monsters inside him, which made him feel a little mechanically uncomfortable. The good news was that the Xingshan he traveled through was already a legendary retired mecha with great success, and there was only one control position in the cockpit, so Yuzaro didn't have to worry about being torn into parts by monsters on the battlefield. The bad news was that the battle situation was not very good recently, and humans were losing ground. The Xingshan Mecha had been pulled out and used as a training machine, and the driver was a neurotic girl with extremely violent attack methods. In dozens of simulation trainings, Beiying never considered the performance limitations and endurance of the Xingshan Mecha. When firing, one of the barrels overheated, and the whole movement was sprayed with rockets, and the close combat damage was supported by overload. Originally, Yuzaro had no pain as a Mecha, but the synchronization device of the first generation of Mecha was very backward. In order to strengthen the connection between the driver and the Mecha, the two must be synchronized by nerves, which directly made Yuzaro experience the so-called phantom pain in battle. What's even more strange is that every time Beiying and he establish neural synchronization, he can feel Beiying's hidden hatred for crossing Shan. But why would someone have such a deep hatred for a Mecha? Even if crossing Shan had offended her in the past, she should blame the driver. Not sure if it's because the Mecha is too old and the sensing is not working well. Yuzaro can only put this problem aside for the time being. After all, there are more important things that need his attention. After each training session, Crossing Shine's Mecha has to undergo a long period of maintenance. Yuzao firmly believes that if this continues, he will be scrapped in the base sooner or later. But what can he do? Crossing Shine's Mecha is not equipped with artificial intelligence, and he has no way to communicate with Beiying. Every time the body is damaged, he would like to pop up 50 windows to warn Beiying, but Beiying doesn't care at all. Alas, that girl really doesn't care about Xingshan at all. After all, Xingshan is a commemorative object. How can she be treated so roughly? After all, she is General Chen's personal assessment. Whether we like her or not, she is the only one who can drive Xingshan in this base now. She is obviously a genius. Why is her personality so bad? She is completely opposite to the general. The energy conversion ratio of Xingshan's power reactor is getting lower and lower. It is estimated that it will be permanently dormant after the next training and sent to the silent cemetery for dismantling and recycling. There is no way. Instead of spending money to repair the old Mecha, it is better to use the money to build a new one. The current manufacturing technology is very mature, and the cost difference between the two is not much. Two maintenance personnel stood on Xingshan's shoulder armor, their tone full of regret. What? Dismantle and recycle? Question mark? I have made contributions to the country. I have shed blood for mankind. Oh no, coolant. You can't dismantle me. I want to enter the museum. I want to travel the exhibition. Although Yuzao was not sure whether he would still be conscious after being dismantled, he absolutely could not take this risk. This matter concerns life and death. Yuzao must come up with a solution before he is ruined by Beiying. Wait, did you hear any sound? There was a vibration under the feet of the two maintenance technicians. The power reactor. The power reactor is vibrating. Go back to the maintenance platform. In the control room, the people who were still arguing and watching the show also realized that something was wrong and turned their heads to look at the hangar. But a red light suddenly hit the glass of the control room. It was the light of the huge single eye on the head of the Xingshan Mecha. What's going on? Why did Xingshan suddenly start up? Was it done by the maintenance staff? The commander immediately picked up the intercom and asked. It was the Xingshan Mecha that started up by itself. I don't know if there is a problem with the hibernation system. The person on the other end of the intercom was also very nervous. At this moment, only Yuzao himself knew that this was because his brain overload every time he thought about two complicated problems. The power consumption of the Xingshan Mecha would increase. It's just that, in order to cover up before, he would think about these problems before the body was turned on for maintenance or training preparation. But just hearing that he was about to be dismantled, he admitted that he was anxious. So should I turn off the computer and pretend that I just had a short circuit? Just as Yuzao was thinking about whether to show off his acting skills, his radar detection system suddenly sounded. Several red dots were approaching the black sky base at high speed. I won't really have a short circuit, right? The next second, a deafening alarm sounded throughout the base. Warning. Energy strikes detected on the way. Please evacuate the crowd immediately and go to the nearest shelter. At the same time, dense red dots appeared on Yuzao's radar panel, and their number was so large that it looked like someone had overturned a bag of rice. Suddenly, several blue fireballs smashed through the ceiling of the hangar and attacked the people in the control room. At the critical moment, the Xingshan Mecha suddenly stretched out its arm and pressed the fireball that was still in the air against the wall. Blue mucus flowed out from the fingers of the alloy giant palm, with bursts of steaming white smoke. How can Xingshan move on his own? Before everyone could ask questions, a burst of hurried footsteps came from outside the command room. Report to the general. The Sun Moon Island front has just received a communication that the giant beast Leviathan has launched a round of unknown energy attacks into the stratosphere. Judging from the direction, it is heading towards Zenhei City. A communicator rushed into the control room and breathlessly reported the information he had just received to General Chen. Bang, bang, bang. Outside the base, hundreds of artillery pieces have launched a volley into the sky, and the huge roar temporarily overwhelmed the alarm. Everyone immediately enter the first level combat readiness state. All non-combat personnel enter the underground air defense layer from the stairs. The incident happened suddenly, but General Chen still deployed the order quickly, notifies NH City to cut off all non-essential energy supplies, turn the energy tower to maximum power, and transmit it to the defense shield. General. Just after the order was issued, a soldier stumbled in, his face full of horror. Those energy bodies. They are all monsters. They are type 2 monsters and aggregate monsters. Mobilize the ground troops, shrink the formation to the inside of the high wall, and cooperate with the armored forces and squads to clean up the type 2 monsters. General Chen's face was full of clouds, and he turned to ask the communications officer, how is the situation on the front line? Are there any surplus mechas that can be transferred back? We need mechas to clean up the aggregate beasts. Report to the general. The Red Hurricane and the Raider are already rushing back. It will take another half an hour. Then hold on at all costs. Boom. The sky full of fireballs dragged blue tails and attacked the black sky like a meteor shower. The dense anti-aircraft firepower kept blasting these spheres into scattered pieces of meat, but many of them still landed successfully. The monsters broke out of their shells and roared to hunt all living things. The size of the Type 2 monsters is about 5 meters. Compared with those giant monsters that are tens of meters long, even if there is no mecha, they can be destroyed by ground troops with heavy firepower. The aggregated beasts are different. They are formed by the fusion of a group of special Type 2 monsters. They can quickly evolve into subgiants of about 30 meters in just a few seconds. The most difficult thing is that they will not appear in aggregate form at the beginning. Time passed by minute, and the sound of artillery fire outside the hangar did not stop at all, and the people in the command room kept transferring various information and deploying the general's latest orders. Beiying was left behind. She had changed into a black tight combat uniform and stood at the control position of the Xingqian armor. Outside the mecha, there were dozens of thick cables and a group of maintenance drones. They were doing their best to maintain this mecha in the best condition. Beiying is currently the only person in the base who can operate a mecha, and Crossing Cheyenne is also the only mecha left in the base. It has been 10 years since Crossing Cheyenne's last actual combat. The girl and the mecha are an unstable insurance, but General Chen must gather all the combat power he can mobilize. Roar. A roar that does not belong to humans resounded outside the hangar, and that was definitely not the volume that a Type 2 monster could make. Lie down. As soon as General Chen finished speaking, the huge steel explosion-proof door was torn open, and the red claws grabbed the iron wall, bringing out a string of sparks. Aggregate beast. How is the maintenance of the body? Beiying's eyes were fixed on the crack on the door. The power reactor is only running at a peak of 60%. The heavy machine gun has been loaded, the mobile joints are normal, and the rocket thrusters have enough fuel. Even lying on the ground, the maintenance personnel still dutifully reported the current situation. The mecha still needs auxiliary charging for 10 minutes. Outside the hangar door, the aggregate beast was impatiently tearing the cracks to get in. Beiying suddenly smiled. She ignored the maintenance personnel's words and directly activated the neural synchronization link. A few seconds later, the Xingqian mecha suddenly tore off all the cables on its body. Come on, old man, let me see how you became a legend back then. Chapter 2 Your body is my rule. Then can you wait until the old thing is fully charged before attacking? I don't have any backup energy. If Yuzio had a cheat code after traveling through time and space to become a mecha, then he would definitely choose the blue pill that can slap Beiying twice across the screen. But the fact is that from the moment the driver and Crossing Cheyenne complete neural synchronization, most of the actions and commands of the mecha will be completed by the driver. With the neural link established, Yuzio cannot move freely like when the cabin is empty. If he wants to fight against the action commands issued by the driver, there will definitely be a conflict between their consciousness, thereby increasing the energy consumption of the mecha. This is a very dangerous behavior for him, an old model mecha, especially since his driver Beiying likes to manually enter the overload mode to forcibly improve the performance of the mecha. Bang. Just when Crossing Cheyenne's mecha had just broken free from the cables on his body, a 30-meter tall aggregate beast had completely torn open the hangar door. Its head structure is like a hammerhead shark, with 3 pairs of green eyes neatly arranged on the edge of its skull. Its thick and powerful forelimbs allow it to stand with its back hunched. Its claws, which are almost as big as its head, are enough to tear apart any man-made armor. Its three-pointed tails covered with scales swing freely behind it. A subgiant beast that is good at close-range combat. In terms of height, it is 20 meters shorter than the Xingqian Mecha, but in terms of volume, this guy is evenly matched with Xingqian. After all, Xingqian is a first-generation Mecha, and the polymer beast is a third-generation monster. Roar. Yuzao didn't know why monsters always like to roar when they appear on the scene, but for the unscrupulous Beiying, this is a great opportunity to attack. She did not hesitate to use Xingqian's fuel reserves, and directly turned on the power of the rocket thrusters to the maximum, flew up and punched the polymer beast in the head. Boom. The polymer beast, which had just entered the door, was directly punched back outside the hangar by Xingqian. Before the polymer beast could react, the Xingqian Mecha had already punched it in the chin for the second time. The polymer beast, which was hit twice in a row, immediately lost its balance and fell into the ocean behind it. Wrist blades unsheathed. Two huge wrist blades popped out from the black armor. Xingqian jumped up and rode directly on the body of the polymer beast, swinging the blade at its head. Bang. Warning, the back armor has been damaged by 32%. Beiying, who was standing in the control position, groaned and almost stumbled forward. Xingqian's wrist blade deviated and failed to cut off the head of the polymer beast. The back of the Mecha was stabbed by the three sharp tails of the polymer beast. Beiying, who lost his center of gravity, had not yet regained his balance, and the sharp tail of the polymer beast launched a second attack. Suddenly, the Xingqian Mecha automatically entered the overload mode without receiving Beiying's command, and the power of the power furnace suddenly soared. At this moment, Beiying felt that her body was controlled by the Mecha. Crossing Shine turned his waist and turned around to cut the sharp tail. Warning, the back armor is damaged by 41%. A sharp tail had pierced deeply into Crossing Shine's back armor, cutting off part of the support column. But Crossing Shine's wrist blade also cut off the other two sharp tails at the same time. The polymer beast let out a heart-wrenching roar, and green juice was gushing out from the cross-section of its tail. Now, without thinking about the strange thing that just happened, Beiying made a decision immediately. She ignored the sharp tail inserted into Crossing Shine's back, and directly started the rocket thruster in the riding position, stretched out her arm, and chopped down at the head of the polymer beast. Click. The sharp blade cut off the flesh and bones of the polymer beast's head with a huge thrust, directly separating its head and body. Seeing the seawater dyed green, Beiying gritted his teeth and pulled out the sharp tail inserted in Crossing Shine's back. In the case of nerve synchronization, the pain is no different from pulling a knife from his back. Warning, the back Mecha is damaged by 43%. Crossing Shine stood up from the body of the polymer beast, and electric sparks were constantly coming out from the crack on his back. Crazy girl, you really want me to die? If Yuzao hadn't forcibly taken back the control of the Mecha, Crossing Shine's Mecha would have been dismantled into scrap metal at this moment. Did you see it, General? This is my strength. Beiying, who won the first battle, became more confident. No, there are new energy fluctuations around you. Retreat to the hangar quickly, we have to sink to the safe layer. Before General Chen finished speaking, two polymer beasts that had just been fused emerged from the sea again. It's too late, it takes time for the hangar to sink. You go down now, I'll hold them back. Beiying had no intention of retreating at all, but instead drove Crossing Shine to take a fighting stance. Where the hell do you get the courage to fight two people alone? Yuzao wanted to cry, but had no tears. The damage to his back had reduced Crossing Shine's speed of movement, and the temperature of the power furnace had remained high. He couldn't rush to seize control again, otherwise Crossing Shine would explode and disintegrate due to overload of the power reactor before the battle even started. Ding. Just when Yuzao was in a dilemma, he heard the sound in his DNA when he played games in his previous life. Whenever he encountered a level that he couldn't beat, he would press the number keys on the small keyboard through his own efforts, making an invincible sound. Is it coming? The host has completed the first kill, and the evolution system has been activated. Historical kills have been converted into corresponding evolution points. Name, Yuzao, Mecha code, Crossing Shine, Machine Soul level, Level 1, Machine Performance, First Generation Nuclear Powered Armor. height 50 meters, weight 8,000 tons, equipment module, killerist blade, heavy artillery, back rocket thruster, combat skills, none, combat power rating, D level, 1,300 points, available evolution points. 20,000. Why does this stupid thing have to be activated at this time? Yuziro almost laughed at the timing of the system's appearance, but he had to figure out how the so-called devolution system works now, otherwise it would be too late. When Beiyang drove him up, the power of the power furnace instantly climbed to the maximum, and the scorching high temperature even burned Beiyang standing in the control room. Yuziro's machine brain entered an unprecedented overload state, and he quickly understood how this system worked. The entire evolution system revolves around evolution points. As long as a Xingqian mecha can achieve a kill, it will get the corresponding evolution points. The higher the level of the monster, the more points will be rewarded. However, there are different levels of kills. If Yuziro kills the monster independently without any help, he can get 100% of the reward points. However, if the monster is attacked by other attacks, the points will be rewarded according to the proportion of the damage caused by Yuziro. In addition, there are two special reward mechanisms. First, if Yuziro kills a certain monster that has never been seen before, he will get 200% of the evolution points for achieving the first kill. Second, if the monster level is unique or above, Yuziro will not only get evolution points, but also directly obtain equipment modules or combat skills with special abilities. What Yuziro didn't expect was that as the first generation legendary mecha, the evolution system actually converted all of Xingqian's historical kills into evolution points and gave them to Yuziro. However, since the level of the first generation monsters is generally a bit weak now, these points added up are not too much. Evolution points can be exchanged for rewards in the mall, but what surprised Yuziro was that the types of rewards in the mall far exceeded his expectations. The largest number of items in the mall are machine upgrades and equipment modules, from whole machines to parts upgrades. Yuziro just flipped through them and found that there were dozens of pages. It even contained some technologies that humans have not yet mastered. Not only that, there are also special machine soul evolutions in the mall, but the products under this category are too abstract, and Yuziro can't figure out what machine souls are in a short time. However, he still caught a very special product at a glance. Machine soul embodiment. Appear in the human world as a living body, and can switch between the form of machine soul and life body at any time. Required machine soul level. 3 price. 100,000 evolution points. There is hope of becoming a human. Roar. The roar of the aggregate beast brought Yuziro's thoughts back to reality. Beiyang had already controlled Yuziro to rush towards the monsters. Can you please not be so reckless? Yuziro was so angry that he could only exchange 2 parts for upgrades in the last few seconds of sprint time. The turbine nuclear power reactor and the encapsulated holographic high intelligence AI interactive system. The former is used to extend the life of Crossing Shine's precarious mecha and greatly improve the performance of Crossing Shine's mecha. The latter is used as a machine soul container, allowing Yuziro to communicate with the driver Beiyang, and reduces energy consumption when operating Crossing Shine's mecha. Both parts are the most core components of the mecha, and they are expensive. Together, they directly consumed Yuziro's 16,000 evolution points. Exchange successful. The system will complete the delivery within 10 minutes. Why is there still a delivery time? Yuziro thought that, after placing the order, these accessories would be loaded on him immediately. Even if it is unreasonable to load from the 4th dimension out of thin air, you can just drop 2 beams of light from the sky and hit Crossing Shine's mecha to go through the process. What a backward system it must be to make the host wait for 10 minutes for logistics delivery when technology has evolved to the cyberpunk era. But the money has been spent, the goods have been shipped, and he has to make it through these 10 minutes. Bang, bang, bang. The double-barreled cannon on the back of Xingqian's mecha was not idle either, and it launched an artillery attack on one of the rushing aggregate beasts. The fierce artillery fire bombarded the aggregate beast, but it only slowed down its offensive pace. The model of the cannon on Xingqian's mecha was too old, and its power could not penetrate the armor of the new generation of monsters. Then let's do it hard. Beiyang controlled Xingqian, to charge at full speed and swung the blade at the head of the aggregate beast. The aggregate beast raised its claws to block Xingshan's sharp blade, and the other claw rushed straight to Xingshan's chest. Boom. Xingshan also blocked the attack of the aggregate beast. The two sides formed a stalemate with four fists, and no one could spare a hand. However, the aggregate beast has a tail, and Xingshan does not. Three sharp tails rushed towards Xingshan's head, and the speed was so fast that Beiying could not react at all. The next second, Xingshan's head was pierced on the spot. Chapter 3 Synchronous Disconnection. Neural synchronization protection is automatically turned on. The head link has been disconnected, and the synchronization rate has dropped to 72%. Warning, the head armor has been damaged, the thermal vision has failed, the energy radar has failed, and the backup vision module is starting. Xingshan, as the name suggests, is the only exception among the first generation mechas that does not have a cockpit on the head. Its cockpit is below the chest and above the abdomen. The reason is simple. The head of the mecha cannot be too heavy, nor can it be too large, which results in the head's defense level being far less solid than the torso of the mecha. So why not just stuff the cockpit into the body with a higher defense level? Facts have proved that humans have underestimated the intelligence of monsters. After several encounters, the monsters knew to attack the power core and cockpit of the mecha, which directly led to half of the first generation mechas becoming flat-top Marquis. The advanced design of the Xingshan mecha made it the only first generation mecha that retired gloriously. Machine gun locked, aim at the eyes. There is no way that Beiying would let go of the opportunity created by Xingshan losing his head. Due to the old model, and the fact that Xingshan and the monster were constantly moving, Xingshan's heavy machine guns could only aim roughly at medium and long distances, and could not achieve precise strikes at all. Now, the opportunity has come. The chain turned at full speed under Xingshan's spine armor, and the two heavy machine guns also aimed their muzzles at the three pairs of green eyes of the aggregation beast. Fire. Bang bang bang. Hot flames and thick smoke spewed out of the muzzle, pushing the heavy shells out of the barrel, and hitting the aggregation beast directly in the eyes. The aggregation beast let out a terrible scream, and the original stalemate with Xingshan was immediately broken. Go to hell. Beiying shouted, and Xingshan exerted force with both hands, directly inserted the wrist blade into the chest of the aggregate beast, and cut the shoulders of the aggregate beast all the way up. The two thick forelimbs were cut off by Xingshan, and fell into the shallow sea, causing huge waves. Before the aggregate beast fell, Xingshan stepped back, bent his body, swung his wrist blade, and chopped off the head of the aggregate beast. The battle was not over yet, and another aggregate beast rushed to Xingshan at this moment. The two sides were close, and Xingshan had no room to maneuver. He could only raise his double blades in front of him. The aggregate beast charged at full speed and directly hit the abdomen of Xingshan's mecha with its hammer-shaped head. Boom. The neural synchronization protection is automatically activated. The abdominal link has been disconnected, and the synchronization rate has dropped to 59%. Even though she didn't feel any pain, Beiying still felt as if her body was hit straight by a speeding car, and the violent impact almost threw her out of the operating position. A string of dazzling sparks came out from Xingshan's waist, and the sound of mechanical parts breaking was as messy and fragmented as a bucket of thumbtacks falling on the ground. Warning, the armor on both arms is damaged by 47%. The armor on the waist is damaged by 83%, and the rocket thrusters are ineffective. Even Yuzio didn't expect that his weight of 8,000 tons could be hit like a light scarecrow and fly directly out. If his arms hadn't sunk at the moment of contact between the two sides, he would probably have been broken in half by now. Serious damage to the body is detected. Please use the escape pod to evacuate the mecha immediately. Don't even think about it. Beiying used both hands to support the driving base and stood up again with all her strength. She would never allow herself to escape from the battlefield. She would die in the mecha. Xingshan's mecha was already riddled with holes. Every piece of armor on his body was covered with battle scars. The injuries on his back and waist made Xingshan's mobility drop to the bottom. Not far away, the polymer beast was roaring at Yuzio, preparing for a second charge. It had succeeded once, so of course it had to destroy Xingshan completely in one go. This was exactly the situation Yuzao didn't want to see the most. If the two sides could get close to close combat, Crossing Shine's mecha would still have a chance to kill the polymer beast. But if there was another charge, with the performance of the body seriously damaged and the rocket thrusters failing, I'm afraid Crossing Shine would be completely smashed before cutting off the head of the polymer beast. And Crossing Shine's artillery could not cause effective damage to the polymer beast. When it charged, it would hide its eyes under the headbutt, and Yuzao had no chance to shoot it. The most promising way to succeed was to get rid of the polymer beast at medium distance, but Crossing Shine's mecha had no means to attack the opponent at medium distance. The green waves hit Crossing Shine's calves buried in the water. Yuzao used the backup vision on the chest of the mecha to look at the monster's corpse beside him. Roar. The aggregation beast roared to the sky. It first retreated a few steps, then lowered its body, and suddenly launched a charge in the direction of Crossing Shine. Beiying took a deep breath, and there was no sign of hesitation or fear in her red pupils. She wanted to take a gamble to see if she could dodge this charge and cut off the opponent's head with the wrist blade when she turned sideways. But she knew that the success rate of this idea was infinitely close to zero. Crossing Shine's current body state made it difficult to avoid this turning charge in advance, not to mention dodging the opponent sideways when getting close. Even so, as long as there is a glimmer of hope for success, she will take the gamble. The distance between the two sides is closing at a high speed, and the aggregation beast's charge speed is increasing. At this moment, the voice she least wanted to hear suddenly rang out in the cockpit. Warning, the synchronization rate has dropped to 27%, which is lower than the minimum driving threshold. There is a risk of loss of control of the mecha. Please exit the mecha immediately. Beiying had heard similar warnings no less than 10 times during training. Every time this happened, Crossing Shine would immediately force shut down all functions and enter safety protection mode. No matter how Beiying ordered him, Crossing Shine would not move. And this was exactly the reason why Beiying could not go to the battlefield. Move, old thing. Move. Rage completely took over Beiying's brain. She never expected that the accident that occurred during training would happen again at this time. Beiying slapped the control panel in front of her frantically and pressed the restart button dozens of times in just a few seconds. Give it to me. Move. Crossing Shine moved. But he didn't move in the way Beiying expected. The power reactor was spinning at an overspeed, and the high temperature almost turned the entire cockpit into an oven. The invisible force grabbed Beiying's body. She was once again held hostage by the mecha. Crossing Shine turned his body and quickly rushed to the body of the polymer beast that fell beside him. He grabbed one of the pointed tails and cut it off with a knife. If there is any part of the polymer beast that is as hard as its head, it is only its pointed tail. Crossing Shine held the pointed tail tightly with his right hand, pushed all the power to his arm, and swung it hard at the polymer beast that was rushing towards him. The thick and powerful pointed tail was like a strong long whip, cutting through the whistling air and whipping the polymer beast's head directly behind it. Snap! The polymer beast that failed to charge fell headfirst into the sea next to it, splashing huge waves. Crossing Shine took over the spinning pointed tail and found that its end was already covered with green liquid. This whip was whipped into the flesh of the polymer beast alive. Having succeeded once, Yuzao naturally couldn't stop there. He waved his sharp tail again, whipping the head of the aggregation beast while moving towards it. When Yuzao walked in front of the aggregation beast, the subgiant was already dying, bloody and mangled. Yuzao inserted his wrist blade into the head of the aggregation beast without hesitation, ending its life. The body is seriously damaged. Please use the escape pod to exit the mecha immediately. The rain of fire in the sky was still falling. Looking around, the high walls were filled with monsters and artillery fire. The barrier of Zenhei City in the distance was still struggling to hold on, and fine cracks had already appeared on the blue energy shield. Yuzao dragged his broken body and walked towards the hangar step by step. Xingshan's body was on the verge of its limit, and the damage to the power reactor had reached an irreversible point. If it was not immediately transformed, it would become a pile of scrap metal in less than 2 hours. The body is seriously damaged. Please use the escape pod to exit the mecha immediately. The alarm sounded again and again in the cockpit. Beiyang looked at the red outline of the Mecha on the control panel and suddenly felt something stuck in his throat. However, just as the man and the Mecha walked to the door of the hangar, there was another movement in the ocean behind them. Unknown energy fluctuations detected. Energy level 4. The system voice came from Beiyang's communication equipment. Crossing Shine's energy radar had been destroyed long ago. Beiyang, I order you to evacuate from the Mecha now. There is a level 4 monster that we have never seen before that is merging. General Chen's voice was so loud that it almost made Beiyang's ears tinnitus. Don't even think about it. After a long silence, Beiyang squeezed out these 3 words from between his teeth. If someone else said this, Beiyang might not be so resistant. But only General Chen's order sounded so harsh, and anger and resistance instantly occupied Beiyang's brain. This strong hatred was clearly felt even by Yu Zhao, whose synchronization rate was reduced. This is an order. Beiyang directly cut off her communication with the command room. She knew that now. Only she and Crossing Shine could stop this monster. She and Crossing Shine were the last line of defense. Once she evacuated now, the people in the entire base would be ruthlessly slaughtered by the monster. Beiyang could not accept this outcome. Her original intention of becoming a pilot was to protect those who could not resist the monsters. Even if she would die in battle. More than a dozen Type 2 monsters with green light all over their bodies were merging near the coast, but this process could not be completed in a few seconds like ordinary aggregate beasts. As if to protect itself from being disturbed, several new aggregate beasts also emerged from the side of the fusion body. 3 minutes left. Yu Zhao smiled bitterly as he looked at his delivery countdown. He didn't know if he was really laughing because he had no body and Crossing Shine had no head, but in his own imagination, he really laughed. Warning, the neural synchronization link has been disconnected. Bang. Crossing Shine tore open the armor outside his cockpit and pulled Beiyang out directly from the operating position. Beiyang didn't even react to what happened, and the indescribable surprise made her mind blank. How is this possible? When she came to her senses, she had already been put into the empty hangar by Crossing Shine. How is this possible? Everyone in the command room who had descended to the safe level also saw this incredible scene, and General Chen looked at Crossing Shine's huge back in the sunset and was silent for a long time. Yu Zhao walked towards the coast step by step, and the memories engraved deep in Crossing Shine's mecha kept emerging in front of his eyes. He saw the city being flattened by monsters and millions of people died overnight. He saw flames rising in the sky, and people and the earth sank to the bottom of the sea. He saw mechas fighting monsters, and some people stayed in the cabin forever. He saw himself lying in the hangar, alone and being regarded as a legend. What is the meaning of mechas being created? In a trance, Yu Zhao seemed to hear the question from Crossing Shine. The power reactor limit has been unlocked, and the cooling device is shutting down. Bang. Several huge cooling tanks fell from Crossing Shine's body. The originally transparent glass had long been blurred by steam, and the ice blow liquid was boiling. Warning, the power reactor has exceeded the rated maximum power, and the body is melting. Yu Zhao could feel that his alloy armor was twisting and deforming due to the high temperature. The power reactor that had lost its limit was like a sun that was about to explode, madly pouring overflowing energy into the body. The high temperature like lava dyed Crossing Shine's double blades red, and steaming smoke rose from the body. It was a flame that even steel could not withstand. Behind him was a crumbling city, a precarious line of defense, and thousands of people who needed to be protected. Fight until the last moment. I don't know if this was Crossing Shine's idea or Yu Zhao's own idea, but at this moment they have become one. Chapter 4, Legends of the Past. Crossing Shine quickened his pace. Even though the body was burning, Yu Zhao could still sense the surging energy that was rampaging through the machine. With every step, countless melted metals dripped down at Crossing Shine's feet, evaporating the rising tide. The battlefield is the only destination for the Mecha. Crossing Shine began to move forward at full speed, and the surging heat waves flowed through the metal gaps in the machine. At this moment, Crossing Shine seemed to have returned to 10 years ago. Come on. Amid the overlapping roars of the monsters, Crossing Shine rushed towards the dazzling fusion body regardless of everything. A strong aggregate beast charged directly at Crossing Shine, and Yu Zhao chose to respond with his fists. Boom. The collision sounded throughout the world, and Crossing Shine's hot blade pierced into the hard skull of the aggregate beast, and his fist smashed the monster's face into a pulp. Warning, wrist armor is damaged by 31%. 6 thick pointed tails swept across the sea, bringing up a huge wave, and whipped directly towards Crossing Shine's chest. Crossing Shine opened his arms, and grabbed 2 of the sharp tails tightly, but the remaining 4 had already sunk into his armor. Sizzle. But Crossing Shine did not fall down because of this. Instead, he exerted force with both hands and directly used his violent strength and the high temperature attached to the surface of the body to tear off the 2 sharp tails. Then, Crossing Shine waved his arms, and cut off the 4 sharp tails on his chest with his wrist blade. Warning, the chest armor is damaged by 67%. Uzio no longer cared about these warnings. He had become one with Crossing Shine. Green liquid dripped from Crossing Shine's chest. Crossing Shine pulled out the sharp tails embedded in the armor while running. The 2 polymer beasts that lost their sharp tails also fell into madness, and charged in the direction of Crossing Shine's movement at the same time. Warning, the power reactor has collapsed, and the body is expected to dissolve in 5 minutes and 43 seconds. Uzio had never felt so light, even though the surging power was about to burn him out. When the 2 polymer beasts were about to hit Crossing Shine, this huge mecha actually left the ground with both feet and flew forward. The blade, which had been melted by the high temperature and bent, slashed across the backs of the 2 beasts, cutting 2 cuts that were tens of meters long. Boom. Crossing Shine rolled to the ground, stirring up a huge wave, and the few remaining protective armor on his body also fell off in this shock. Counting the 2 that had just been injured in the back, there were a full 6 polymer beasts surrounding Crossing Shine from front to back. But Crossing Shine was not afraid at all, and rushed towards the 2 closest polymer beasts. At this moment, Uzio seemed to feel that he had a physical body again. This 50-meter high mecha was already as agile as a human body. Before the claws of the 2 polymer beasts touched Crossing Shine, their heads were already grasped by a pair of burning steel giant hands. Boom. Uzio exerted force with both arms, and 10 fingers had dug into the flesh of the polymer beasts, knocking the heads of the 2 beasts together. Boiling liquid metal and green animal blood splashed in the air, like 2 cans of overturned drinks splashed on the deep blue sea. The whistling wind blew past Uzio's back. Crossing Shine immediately turned around, and used his twisted wrist blade to slash the polymer beast that wanted to sneak attack him. Roar. Seeing the monster take a step back, Crossing Shine immediately rushed forward and gave it a fatal blow on the head. Crack. The broken wrist blade cut through the polymer beast's brain, but the blade also remained in its head forever. Warning, the wrist blade of the left arm killer is damaged. At this moment, the remaining 3 polymer beasts rushed up together. Even though Uzio used his hands to protect his waist, he was still severely injured. Warning, the waist armor is damaged, the left arm mecha is damaged by 81%, the muscle sensing unit is not responding, and the connection is being restarted. Uzio knew without looking that his upper limbs and lower body were already at the point of being disconnected, and only a lonely metal skeleton was left in his left arm. But he is not an electronic system, but a conscious soul. As long as Crossing Shine's power furnace is still running, Uzio can still control this steel body. Boom. Crossing Shine tightly grasped the head of the aggregate beast in front of him, and pushed it hard with his knee. With the almost melted high temperature metal, he directly smashed its jaw into a pool of meat paste. Warning. The chess mecha has been damaged. Several sharp tails pierced through Crossing Shine's back, and even one of them had drilled into Crossing Shine's out of control power furnace. In the blink of an eye, the sharp tail had completely melted in the runaway power furnace. Uzio's wrist blade on his right arm had also melted by 2/3 and could only withstand 1 attack. It's not time yet. The next second, Crossing Shine suddenly grabbed a sharp tail that pierced through him and kept pulling it longer and longer from his chest. He could feel the power in his body rapidly fading, which was a sign that the power furnace was about to go out. Uzio roared silently and saw Crossing Shine grabbing the tail sting of the sharp tail and stabbing it into the head of one of the aggregate beasts. Afterwards, Crossing Shine ignored the damage on his body and directly hugged the neck of the last aggregation beast with his arms, holding its chin and upper jaw with his hands. The aggregation beast's mouth was cracking open little by little, and green juice was surging in its throat. Its sharp claws were tearing all the metal parts of Crossing Shine's body frantically, but this did not make the hands that were strangling its head loosen a bit. Die. Crossing Shine pulled hard and directly split the aggregation beast's head in half. This also drained the last energy in the power furnace. 7 aggregation beasts had all fallen in front of Crossing Shine, leaving only the fusion body that was still growing. The system's warning had long been silent due to insufficient power, and the last ray of light in the power furnace was also extinguishing. In Uziro's blurred vision, the new fusion beast was about to complete hatching. It was a giant beast that was 20 meters taller than him, and unimaginable energy gathered in it. If it was allowed to hatch successfully, everything would be over. Crossing Shine's body was shaky, and every step he took seemed to fall into the sea. Bang! The silver metal arm fell off Xingshan's shoulder and sank into the sea. Xingshan's power reactor had gone out, and Uziro was moving forward relying on the remaining energy that melted his torso. The sun was setting, and the sea breeze blew on Xingshan's shaky steps. In the hangar, Beiying knelt on the ground, watching Xingshan's lonely back step by step in front of the fusion body with moist eyes. Fight until the last moment. The red wrist blade stopped in front of the fusion body and stopped moving. Uziro used up the last bit of his energy. He was like a giant statue, forever frozen in that moment. General, an unidentified object is passing through the atmosphere and landing in the offshore area outside the hangar. General Chen instantly put away all his emotions and turned his eyes to the surveillance screen. Bang! After a sonic boom that resounded through the sky, a huge black cube went straight through the clouds and fell to the sea like a meteor. Does it have life and energy characteristics? General Chen stared at the cube in the picture vigilantly. No, General. Then keep an eye on the new fusion monster first. General Chen made a prompt decision. Deploy half of the firepower in the offshore area and fire at the fusion body. But Crossing Shine. No buts. General Chen knew that doing so would affect the Crossing Shine mecha that had stopped operating, but he had no choice. Wait. The communications officer suddenly covered his earphones. They're back. They're back. In the distance, 2 tall figures were approaching the fusion body at high speed from the far sea. It's the Red Hurricane and the Raiders. Boom. Before the communications officer finished speaking, a shocking explosion was heard outside the hangar. 9 golden crowfish missiles were launched from the matrix on the chest of the Red Hurricane, split into 27 Macrolock missiles in the air, and bombarded the fusion beast directly. After a burst of thick smoke, the fusion beast dragged its broken right forelimb and roared at the 2 mechas. Its body was covered with green viscous liquid, and its tail was not fully extended, but its huge size still shocked everyone in the command room. It forcibly interrupted its own hatching process to resist the missile matrix just now. General Chen directly judged this strange scene. Red Hurricane, Raider, approach the target at full speed to launch an attack. The 6 giant jet nozzles behind the Red Hurricane were fully powered, directly pushing this 85-meter high giant to an unimaginable speed. In just a few seconds, the Red Hurricane rushed towards the fusion beast like a comet flying on the sea. Brother Jun, you don't have to take action on this underdeveloped new species. The speaker was Meng Changqing, one of the pilots of the Red Hurricane. In the blink of an eye, the Red Hurricane had arrived in front of the fusion beast and punched its huge head. Boom. The shock caused by the impact of just this punch set off huge waves on the sea. The fusion beast stepped back a few steps and knocked the already stopped Crossing Shine into the sea. A huge crack had already appeared on its face. Don't fall, I haven't exerted my strength yet. The giant fist of the Red Hurricane began to deform, revealing the turbine transmission wrapped with electric current under the armor, and the 5 plastic alloys connected to the fingertips began to stretch, compressing the huge energy layer by layer. 5th gear charging, a birth gift for you. Meng Changqing swung the swinging fist fiercely in the cockpit. Bang! The red giant fist with bursting electricity hit the head of the fusion beast directly, and the latter flew out on the spot like a rag doll hit by a speeding truck. At this time, the raiders, who were moving at full speed, finally came to the side of the Red Hurricane, and both looked in the direction where the fusion beast fell. It's over, you're a step too late, Junj. Meng Changqing controlled the Red Hurricane to shake his fist, which was covered with green fluorescent liquid. The raiders did not respond, but rushed to the fallen fusion beast with a few big steps and pulled it out of the sea. The fusion beast was left with only a sticky body, and its head had turned into a pool of mud and scattered into the sea. The crack on the neck was shocking just by looking at it. There are indeed no signs of life. Liu Zengson, one of the pilots of the raiders, finally spoke. "No one can catch my punch." The red hurricane flicked the non-existent ash on his shoulder with his hand. "You can brag after the defense battle is over." In the cockpit of the red hurricane, the elder Meng Changkang looked at his younger brother, who obediently shut his mouth. "General, let us take over the next battle." Chapter 5, Alien Objects. The original purpose of the giant mecha design was to deal with giant monsters that were tens of meters long. But this does not mean that these giants that are tens of meters long have no means to deal with small monsters. Monsters are evolving, and mechas are also upgrading. Notify all ground troops to immediately stop all exchanges of fire and go to the nearest underground shelter to wait for further instructions. General Chen accepted Meng Changkang's suggestion. Cleaning monsters is the specialty of mechas. Red Hurricane will now clean up all Type 2 monsters in the high wall. The raiders will first help the recovery team to retrieve Crossing Shan before joining the battle. Crossing Shan? Meng Changking asked incredulously. "Yes, General." Before Meng Changking could continue, Meng Changkang interrupted his brother. "Got it. I promise to complete the mission." The raider also responded. "Now that Red Hurricane and raiders have joined the battlefield, this crisis will soon be over. But letting giant mechas to clean up small monsters in the high wall will come at a price." Starting from the second generation of mechas, all models are equipped with small caliber firepower for dealing with small monsters, striving to accurately strike these agile things. In the open sea, or in no man's land, these giant mechas can even use all their equipment to carry out terrifying ranged strikes, annihilating these annoying ants in large numbers in a short period of time. But if you are in the coastal area or in the city, you must be careful to let the large monsters clean up these small things. If you let the mechas fire at full power, it will cause immeasurable losses. So when facing Type 2 monsters, all forces are more willing to use ground troops with heavy firepower to clean them up, rather than letting the mechas run rampant in the city. But General Chen doesn't think so. He has always believed that human life is more important than economic losses. The Black Sky base has a complete high wall defense line. Only the hangar and some defense facilities are distributed outside the wall, and the rest of the facilities are inside the wall. There is also a safe distance between the base and Zhenhe City, in order to ensure that when a battle occurs in the Black Sky, Zhenhe City will not be affected as much as possible. General, an unknown cube was found near the sea. The length, width and height are 15, 12, and 20 meters respectively. There is no energy or life sign. The raiders' report drew everyone's attention back to the mysterious black object that fell from the sky. If it is not aggressive, wait until the battle is over before dealing with it. All units should keep a safe distance of 2,000 meters from the cube. Inside the high wall, the arms of the Red Hurricane have transformed into electromagnetic energy cannons that can fire continuously, bombarding piles of Type 2 monsters. Any ant who wants to climb onto the body of this giant will be killed on the spot by the high voltage current covered on its armor. At the same time, the blue fire rain in the sky gradually stopped, which means that the number of monsters will not increase. It's disgusting. I must clean up the Red Hurricane first after the battle is over. Meng Changking frowned and stomped on more than a dozen Type 2 monsters that wanted to escape. Suddenly, the feet of the Red Hurricane were covered with sticky green liquid. Maybe there is no time. On our way back, Leviathan is still firing energy attacks in all directions. Otherwise the attack on the Black Sky would not have lasted so long. Meng Changkang looked serious and cautiously searched for the fish that slipped through the high wall. Brother, do you mean that we have to rush to other places? The probability is very high. Now the overall number of mechas has obviously decreased. There must be a place that needs our help. What if the Black Sky is attacked again? We are there. The raider suddenly appeared from behind the Red Hurricane and fired small caliber artillery at several jumping Type 2 monsters. Since Leviathan can launch attacks in this way, the base must be guarded by someone. Is that Mecha really Xingshan? Who is driving it? I remember that there should be no other pilots in the base except the general. Meng Chanking finally asked what he wanted to say before. Did you forget Beiying? Who? How can she drive a mecha with a half-baked mind? Brother Jun, please stop teasing me, okay? Meng Chanking didn't believe Liu Zhengxuan's words at all. Report to the general. The energy radar shows that there are only 11 type 2 monsters hiding in the building. Do the raiders and the Red Hurricane need to evacuate the battlefield? Liu Zhengxuan first reported the situation and then replied to Meng Chanking. After receiving the evacuation order, whether it is her or not, you will know when you ask the general later. Half an hour later, in the Black Sky hangar. The battle is over. Except for those who need to carry out post-war maintenance, the rest of the people gathered here. Crossing Shine's body, which has not been dried yet, was placed here with the mysterious cube. Except for a few researchers surrounding the black cube, most of the others stood in front of Crossing Shine's body. Beiying was lying alone next to Crossing Shine's cockpit, looking lonely. General Chen meaningfully turned his eyes away from Crossing Shine and turned to the crowd who were discussing fiercely. How is it? Have you come to any conclusion? I've never seen such a material before, and the craftsmanship is more precise than I can imagine. The leading researcher couldn't contain his excitement and showed the instrument in his hand to General Chen. General, look, every cut surface of it is so smooth that there is no flaw. The length, width, height, all the numbers are accurate to the thousandth decimal place and are all zero. Can you contact the space station to determine its source? General Chen knew that this thing had fallen from the sky after all. If anyone noticed it first, it must be those who were guarding the sky. I've asked them, and they said it was dropped from the Garden of Eden. Garden of Eden. General Chen touched his stubble with his hand. He knew that it was an experimental unmanned space city that was sent to low Earth orbit by the Starring Alliance 2 months ago, but because the Watcher Alliance and the Starring Alliance had different ideas, the two sides did not communicate with each other at all. However, the lack of information is actually a very euphemistic statement. The opposition between the two alliances is almost all round, and it is the best situation that they did not fight each other. When the dark sky was attacked, the Garden of Eden actually dropped something like this from orbit. It was hard to say whether this was a timely help or a stab in the back. Is their industrial technology so far ahead of us? General Chen put on the gloves given by the researchers and touched the smooth surface of the cube with his hands. It was indeed as they said, so fine that it was amazing. Sorry, General, as far as I know, the technical level of the Starring Alliance cannot produce something of this level. The researcher took a deep breath, as if to announce something important. Excuse me, I don't think this cube can be made by humans. After the researcher said this, the whole hangar fell into a dead silence. It was not that everyone did not believe what he said, but because the only alien race known to humans at present was the monster that drilled out of the sea. If this thing dropped from the Garden of Eden was not a man-made thing. Everyone looked at the cube with strange eyes, as if this square black column was a Pandora's box that could destroy the world. Several young guys who had been touching the cube took several steps back. You can study a broken pillar for so long. Why don't you think about how to repair Crossing Shine? Beiying, who had been silent, broke the silence in the hangar. This was the first sentence she took the initiative to say after being sent out of the cockpit by Crossing Shine. No one knows what kind of changes and suffering she has experienced during this period of time. The memory that haunted her like a nightmare kept replaying. If Crossing Shine could do this 10 years ago, even though she vented her hatred on this old rat like an unreasonable child and used it retaliatory, Crossing Shine still saved her. When she thought of Crossing Shine's tragic figure in the sunset, Beiying could no longer hate him. Many people cast their eyes on the girl, who bowed her head, but no one responded to her. He is lying here, and he has been lying here since he was rescued by you. The girl's emotions gradually became agitated, like a volcano about to erupt. Miss Bay, I think the priority of the cube. Priority? Beiying didn't give the other party a chance to continue. Everyone present, whose life was not given by Crossing Shine. My life, my brother's life, and the lives of the two military brothers were not given by Crossing Shine. The girl's red pupils instantly moved to the blonde Meng Chanking. Don't think that everyone will accommodate you, a little lunatic. Now is not the time to hold a memorial service for this antique. Facing Beiyang's gaze, Meng Chanqing glared back mercilessly. "Quiet!" General Chen shouted angrily, stopping the tense conversation between the two. "Beiyang, go back to the dormitory and rest now. You are the least qualified to say this. Are you worthy of crossing Shan?" If it was. Beiyang suddenly choked up halfway through her shouting, tears rolling in her eyes. General Chen did not respond, but stared at Beiyang, who was out of control, with a serious expression. No one knew what this majestic general was thinking about writing at this moment. At this time, a middle-aged man with wrinkles slowly took off his hat and walked to Crossing Shan. "Kid, Crossing Shan doesn't need to be repaired anymore. He is Crossing Shan's maintenance technician Liu Yu. From the moment Crossing Shan left the factory, he has been following Crossing Shan in battles and stitching up the giant's wounds. In a blink of an eye, 10 years have passed. He knows that things are different now, and it is best to use the money used to repair Crossing Shan to buy a new Mecha. You have proved that you are a qualified pilot. The Alliance will equip you with a more advanced Mecha, so that you can conquer the world." "No." Tears slid down Beiyang's face, and her body was shaking uncontrollably. "No, you don't have the final say." In fact, when Beiyang said this, the people surrounding Crossing Shan could not hide the sadness on their faces. "Old Yu." General Chen, who had been silent for a long time, suddenly spoke up. "Does the base still have spare parts for Xingshan?" "There is another set, but they are all the same as the ones on Xingshan. They are all old ones." Old Yu smiled bitterly and rubbed his slightly moist eyes. "Before Xingshan retired, it has been kept in the hangar. Then take it out and replace it for Xingshan. If there are any parts missing, make a list and report it to me." General Chen's words stunned everyone present. "General." Old Yu's body trembled slightly. "Are you really going to repair Xingshan?" Everyone knew what this sentence meant. Xingshan is just an old first generation mecha. Using the budget on Xingshan is a waste for the budget-constrained Zuan's Kankiang. "Old Yu, you are one of the people who have been with me the longest in the base. Do you remember how we survived 10 years ago?" Pictures of Xingshan flashed through Old Yu's mind. People at that time regarded Xingshan as a hero. War requires not only personnel and equipment, but also courage, persistence, and faith. General Chen still remembers what his commander said 10 years ago. Anyone who possesses these qualities is a hero, no matter if he is a human or a mecha. General Chen looked at Crossing Shan's huge body with a very deep gaze. "Old Yu, we need heroes." Chapter 6: The Disobedient. General Chen's words made many people present wipe their eyes silently. Xingshan is a mecha that has been in service since the establishment of the Black Sky. It would be a lie to say that people have no feelings for Xingshan. Of course, Meng Chanqing, who has just become an iron pilot for 2 years, is an exception. But he is not the outspoken Beiyang, so he was very sensible and kept silent. "This matter is settled. Liu Yu, when we disperse, you will take people to start repairing. The sooner the better." General Chen already knew everyone's reaction. "Yes, General." Liu Yu wiped his nose and agreed with a smile. "Now, let's put our attention back on the cube." General Chen turned and looked at this alien object. "What do you think? How should we deal with it?" "General, we all agree that we should first confirm the material properties of the cube, such as density, hardness, and a series of basic properties such as melting point and boiling point. Do you think it is necessary to contact the Omega Research Complex?" General Chen threw out the most critical topic. "Yes, General, this is an alien object after all. According to the procedure, it must be reported to Omega," the chief technology officer said reluctantly. Everyone knows that Omega has always looked down on researchers at the frontline base, because the gap between the two in scientific research status can be said to be a world of difference. But the matter is of great importance, and now is not the time to discuss these personal grudges. Then move it to the research room now. General Chen never drags his feet in doing things. Wait. The person who interrupted was Beiyang. Everyone's eyes were focused on this somewhat crazy girl at this moment. "This thing is related to Crossing Shan." Beiyang stretched out her hand, holding a broken support column of Crossing Shan in her palm. "What are you crazy about?" Meng Chanqing really couldn't stand Beiyang's absurd statement. "There is no name of Crossing Shan engraved on this cube. Which eye of yours saw that it is related to Crossing Shan?" But Beiyang didn't lie. Just when she picked up the broken support column, a weak gravitational force like a magnet came from her palm. And the source of the gravitational force was the cube. Beiying ignored Meng Changqing and walked straight to a position 2 meters away from the cube. During the whole process, the support column in Beiying's hand became more and more restless. Snap. The moment Beiying let go, the broken support column flew straight to the cube like a magnet. The next second, a blue light suddenly appeared in the black cube. Find a shelter. Get down. General Chen gave an order, and everyone present immediately hid behind the nearest shelter as quickly as possible. Click. The blue light extended from the top of the cube downward, accurately splitting it in the middle. Wherever the light passed, the mysterious material that originally had no gaps began to separate to both sides in the form of geometric bodies. Buzz. A strange buzzing sound resounded throughout the hangar, and the cube suddenly disintegrated into countless small geometric bodies as thin as dust, rushing towards Beiying like a swarm of insects. In a flash, Beiying flashed and rolled directly behind a metal box on the side. Unexpectedly, the black swarm of insects did not continue to chase the white shadow, but rushed straight into the chest of Xingshan's skyhole. Crash. Countless geometric bodies gathered on Xingshan's chest, and blue light swam in the gaps, like a shuttle shuttling through textile fabrics. In the blink of an eye, a huge black sphere formed in the gap in Xingshan's chest, and quickly spread out countless delicate structures, splicing the sphere with Xingshan's remaining body together. The whole process took less than 10 seconds. What just happened? Seeing that the black sphere no longer had any movement, people stood up from behind the bunkers and slowly gathered around Xingshan's remaining body. Wait, isn't this the shape of a power reactor? Old Yu exclaimed. Everyone realized that the so-called sphere had been deformed twice in the process of splicing with Xingshan, and it was fixed in the shape of a turbine nuclear power reactor. Contact the Omega Research Complex and ask them to send someone over right now. General Chen's expression was extremely serious. Old Yu, the maintenance plan will be suspended for now. If this power reactor is something parasitic on crossing Shan, the consequences will be disastrous. What should we do? Old Yu was also very anxious, rubbing his wrinkled hands back and forth. Hang crossing Shan up temporarily and try to separate the power reactor. If the separation is successful, keep crossing Shan away from this ghost thing, and then start repairs immediately. Don't let this thing take advantage of anything. General Chen immediately said a feasible plan. Yes, General. Old Yu saluted General Chen respectfully. As for you. General Chen turned his head and looked at Beiying, and a powerful aura immediately unfolded. Have you thought about the consequences of disobeying orders on the battlefield? I'm willing to accept the punishment, but I don't regret my decision. Beiying met the general's eyes without fear. You thought you saved everyone, but that's not a reason for you to disobey orders. General Chen shook his head slightly. Stubbornness is not firmness. Recklessness is not bravery. Obeying orders is a duty of a soldier, and you obviously haven't understood this yet. A hot breath rushed to Beiying's cheeks, and she felt that her face must be as red as a child being scolded by her parents. Beiying bit her lips tightly, trembling, staring at General Chen with extremely unwilling and angry eyes, and replied word by word. You are a natural soldier, I'm not. When Beiying said this, General Chen's eyes flashed with a fleeting sadness. Beiying, I will temporarily deprive you of your identity as an iron pilot, and punish you to face the wall in the confinement room for a week. If your attitude is still the same as it is now, your name will be removed from the members of the Black Sky Legion. Do you understand? I understand. Beiying gritted his teeth and replied. Louder. I understand. Beiying repeated his answer loudly, as if venting his emotions. General Chen nodded, turned around and said to the crowd, disband on the spot. The crowd that received the order immediately dispersed. The base had just suffered a heavy blow, and there were still many urgent matters that needed to be dealt with. Only when everyone performed their duties could the big ship of the Black Sky continue to sail on the sea. But just as General Chen was about to turn around and leave, a slightly petite hand suddenly grabbed the corner of his clothes. I only have one request. Beiying lowered her head, her long white hair covering her red eyes. General Chen closed his eyes, took a long breath, and slowly said, say it. Promise me that you will repair Xingshan. I promise. Chapter 7 He is alive. Experimental record, the 27th attempt to separate the power reactor from Crossing Shan. This experiment uses a Red Hurricane's Taiya thermal energy combined sword to cut the target. Under the cold night sky, the dark sky was still brightly lit. Although the monster's body has been recovered, the pollution caused by its blood to the seawater still requires the cleaning team to clean it up 24 hours a day, to barely maintain the safety line. Inside the high wall, the busy transport team is constantly shuttling between the broken walls and ruins, recycling everything that can be used. Fortunately, the medical building has not suffered serious damage. The wounded soldiers have already crowded here. Those with less serious injuries can only lie on both sides of the corridor, leaving more space for the seriously injured who almost lost their lives in the battle. The dazzling lights illuminated every corner of the hangar, as if it were daytime. Crossing Shan, who only had his torso left, had been hung high by chains, like a prisoner who had been tortured, waiting for the next trial from the control console. But a restless roar came from the palm of Red Hurricane. At this moment, this 85-meter tall giant was standing in front of Crossing Shan's body, holding a thermal cutting sword that had just been ignited. Red Hurricane, you can start cutting. The steaming air wrapped around the restless sword body, and the sword tip slowly pierced the black power furnace in front of Crossing Shan. There was no sound, no sparks, and the golden sword blade calmly pressed against the shell of the black power furnace. Apply for increased power. Mecha Kang submitted an application to the control console. Approved. Red Hurricane changed to holding the sword with both hands, and the armor of his arms began to deform, revealing the electric acceleration energy jet hidden in the elbow joint. Bang! 2 arms, a total of 8 jets, all ejected dazzling white light at the same time. The golden Taiya sword suddenly turned dark orange, and the temperature of the sword body at this time was even comparable to the power furnace when the mecha was overloaded. No, stop. Inside the control console, Dr. Chris took off his glasses and rubbed his forehead irritably. Even though Red Hurricane had already turned on the maximum power within the safety conditions, Taiya's sharp blade still couldn't penetrate the black shell even a little bit. It's a waste of time to do this. Next to Chris, a blonde lady also sighed. Red Hurricane immediately removed Taiya from the shell of the power reactor. How can it be so hard? Mecha Kang gasped for breath. If he continued to exert force just now, not only would the Taiya sword be in danger of breaking, but even his arm might be broken. Although Mecha Kang was also panting, his attention was focused on Crossing Shan. Control panel, Red Hurricane requests thermal cutting of Crossing Shan's armor. You'd better contact General Chen. If you don't plan to keep this mecha, then do this. Dr. Chris had also thought of this method a long time ago, but it required the consent of the Black Sky base. No, we don't plan to destroy Crossing Shan, but we just suspect to what extent this substance has spread in Crossing Shan's body. Mecha Kang's eyes were fixed on the holographic panel in front of him, which was displaying the scanner's analysis data on Crossing Shan's remains. The results showed that the artificial alloy content of Crossing Shan's body was significantly reduced, which means that the fusion of the black power furnace and this part of the body has been quite deep. Approved. Red Hurricane raised Taiya with both hands again, but this time it was aimed at the upper part of the power furnace from the perspective of the human body. It is the position of the heart. Sizzle. This time, the hot sword pierced into the armor. Mecha Kang smiled immediately, but just when he was about to say something, the smile on his face froze. The depth that Taiya can penetrate is only 50 centimeters. The two brothers immediately pulled out Taiya and turned to stab at the shoulder and waist mecha at the edge of Crossing Shan, but the results were not much different, 80 centimeters and 85 centimeters respectively. It seems that we are a little late to act. Mecha Kang smiled bitterly. If we acted earlier, we might be able to complete the cutting, while the degree of fusion is low. If it weren't for that little lunatic who insisted on using a broken support column to touch the porcelain cube, we wouldn't have this problem now. Mecha Kang felt a headache when he thought of that scene. Doctor, should we try other cutting methods? Nina, who was standing next to Chris, asked cautiously. What other methods have we not tried? Chris glared at Nina unhappily. Contact General Chen, implement Plan B, ignite the power reactor, and study it here. Don't we really need to take it back? The lady's voice was a little weak, and it didn't sound like a question, but more like a request. Take it back with a destroyed Mecha? Use your brain. Chris's voice suddenly rose. This is not something on Earth, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Are you going to give up the opportunity to go down in history to those high-ranking guys at the headquarters? But, no buts. We will stay here until we figure out the material properties of this thing. Chris interrupted the lady directly. Contact General Chen, right now. 10 minutes later, General Chen brought people to the control console. He had to be present for such an important matter, to avoid any unexpected situations. Xingshan is an old model of custom Mecha. The design was not mature at that time. It is necessary to manually connect the Mecha system and start the nuclear power reactor by electric ignition. General Chen explained to Chris and the others. I didn't expect the general to know so much about mechas. Chris and General Chen stood side by side with a decent smile on their faces. Nina and I may stay in Zuan's Kankian for a while. Thank you for your patience, General. Of course. General Chen responded with a smile. Zuan's Kankian hasn't had any guests for a long time. I hope you will understand if there is any inadequacy in the hospitality. Outside the glass, dozens of cables have been connected to the remains of Xingshan, and Leo Yu stood in front of the elevator, constantly adjusting the energy supply efficiency. General, everything is ready. General Chen's eyes were fixed on Xingshan, and no one could see what he was thinking at the moment. Let's start. With General Chen's order, Leo Yu pulled down the lever used to start the ignition program. The originally dim cables immediately glowed white, continuously transmitting the jumping current to the remains of Xingshan. The sound of mechanical rotation gradually sounded like a steam train coming from the distant horizon towards the crowd. The black power furnace began to heat up, the light yellow beam became brighter and brighter, and the turbine on Crossing Shan's chest slowly turned. Ignition is successful, and the power furnace power is rising. Inside the console, the power number on the screen is rapidly rising. Unknown program intrusion detected. Emergency fuse has been activated. Just when everyone thought everything was going well, the system suddenly issued a warning. Quickly interrupt the connection with Crossing Shan. Dr. Chris immediately discovered the problem. The technician immediately opened the control panel, but at this moment, all the display screens in the control room turned into a snowflake. Warning, the fuse program has been terminated, and the safety protocol is being overwritten. Outside the window, the power of the running power furnace is still rising, and the rotating turbine is like a vortex on the sea, greedily devouring the energy in the cable. At the critical moment, Leo Yu saw a faint white light flashing on Crossing Shan's chest. That was Crossing Shan's backup visual module. The scene of Crossing Shan acting independently immediately emerged in his mind. Could it be? Crossing Shan is alive. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 8 My Choice. Zizzy. In the confinement room, the slightly dim light began to flicker. Beiying leaned against the wall. Her beautiful white hair fell in front of her shoulders. Her handcuffed hands wrapped around her curled knees, and her head was buried in them. Confinement was not a big deal for her at all. Even if she was not stuffed into this cold room, she would not take the initiative to talk to anyone. Of course, no one wanted to take the initiative to provoke this neurotic girl. Being a loner is her unique label in the dark sky, but Beiying was still very sad. Whenever she closed her eyes, her mind was full of the scene of Crossing Shan's last battle, and as a pilot, she could only watch all this from afar in the hangar. She couldn't control her temper, whether in words or actions. She didn't care much about other people's feelings, but this didn't mean that she had no heart. Crossing Shan would not have fallen to this point today. He was a retired training aircraft and there was no need for him to go to the battlefield. A step back, even if the time came when Crossing Shan had to go to war, he shouldn't die in this posture today. If I had been more careful during the simulation training. Beiying's nails were almost digging into her flesh. Since she started living alone, she rarely cried like today. Knock, knock. The heavy alloy door was knocked. Beiying was so immersed in her own world that she didn't notice that there was already some panic in the corridor. Beiying, we have to open the door now. I advise you not to move. According to regulations, people who are locked up in the confinement room will not be handcuffed if they have not committed a crime. But Beiying has a very obvious tendency to violence, so even if she is handcuffed, the people outside the door are still not sure whether she will use other means to attack them. A few seconds later, the door of the confinement room was opened, and 3 fully armed guards with electric batons in their hands surrounded the girl sitting on the ground. They did not relax their vigilance because of the girl's haggard appearance. After all, Beiying's temper of liking to use violence is well known in the base. General Chen wants you to go to the hangar to see him now. Please get up and follow us immediately. Hearing someone talking to her, Beiying slowly raised her head. Her face was pale, her eyes were red, and there were obvious tears under the corners of her eyes. Where is Crossing Shan? Beiying's voice trembled slightly, and her tone was so calm that it didn't sound like she was asking at all, but rather like begging. The 3 exchanged glances. It was indeed the first time they had seen Beiying in this state. Everyone knew that Beiying was not easy to talk to, and her fists were the biggest. In fact, they had all suffered from Beiying, so no one dared to really treat her as a girl. But Beiying's appearance was indeed too abnormal. It's because Crossing Shan wants you to go there. One of them softened his tone. As soon as these words came out, Beiying's pupils immediately lit up again. She immediately got up, wiped the corners of her eyes with her arm, and followed the 3 guards to quickly rush towards the hangar. Along the way, she found that the power system of the entire base seemed to have problems. The lights were flickering, the elevators were out of service, and even the electronic biometric locks that required authentication had failed. The access control had to be opened manually. The 4 of them jogged all the way, and it took them nearly 10 minutes to get to the control room of the hangar. General, the person is here. As soon as he entered the door, Beiying rushed straight to the observation window, with his hands pressed tightly against the glass. Although Crossing Shan was still in a broken state at this time, the power reactor in his chest was running at full speed. What did you do to him? This was the scene that Beiying least wanted to see. Calm down. General Chen did not intend to let Beiying continue, explain the current situation to her. The technician on the side gave an anxious overview. Crossing Shan encountered an unknown error during the ignition of the power furnace, which led to the invasion of the main control system of Zuanskangqiang. Now the power of the entire base is converging towards the power furnace on Crossing Shan. If this continues, the power system of Zuanskangqiang will collapse in less than half an hour. Once the power system collapses, all the fully automatic CNC artillery covering the base will be shut down, and some of our power pipelines are connected to Zhenhe City. Crossing Shan is likely to continue to draw electricity from Zhenhe City along the pipeline. Then why don't you unplug the cable? Beiying didn't understand how she could help, but when she heard that Crossing Shan was actually drawing energy, she was relieved. It can't be unplugged. Crossing Shan transformed the cable into the same material as the power furnace. Even the hot sword can't cut it. What can I do? Faced with Beiying's questioning, the technician suddenly hesitated. The base's main control system has been completely disrupted. We can't use numerical control to change the circuit, nor can we manually cut off the power supply in a short time. Dr. Chris continued the technician's words. From the last log sent back before the system crashed, the intrusion signal came from Crossing Shan. We need someone to establish neural synchronization with it and solve the problem from the inside, and you are the best candidate. No problem. Beiying agreed without thinking. No, it's not that simple. The technician finally spoke. This is not a simple neural synchronization. Crossing Shan has no intelligence system at all, but the intrusion signal came from him, which means that there is a problem with the power reactor. It may have self-awareness. So, Beiying's reaction was so calm that it was beyond everyone's expectations. Do you think this is the only danger? The system is out of control now. There is no safety protocol protection when you establish neural synchronization with Crossing Shan. Open your eyes and look at it. The technician pointed at Crossing Shan outside the window. Crossing Shan is already a broken body. His system is currently in a state of collapse. Once you establish neural synchronization with him, no one knows where your consciousness coordinates will drift to. I know. No, you don't know. Your brain will have a consciousness deviation, and your spirit may be trapped in a fragmented illusion forever lost. The technician became more and more anxious. Do you know how the test driver of the Savior Mecha died? They forced a connection with the Mecha when the system was unstable, and both of them fell into a crazy dream. When they disconnected the synchronization, they were already pronounced brain dead. The technician was still telling Beiying about the dangers, but he found that Beiying was not moved at all. The pair of red pupils was like an unshakable mountain, standing firmly in front of him. You will die. The technician didn't want to watch Beiying put on the helmet without knowing anything. But there was only so much he could do. Everyone in the control room knew about this potential risk, but he was the only one who told Beiying. Uncuff her. General Chen knew that the conversation between the two was over, so he immediately asked the guards to open the shackles on Beiying's hands. Under the gaze of everyone, Beiying sat down on the chair without hesitation and picked up the helmet that was only used during training. Thank you. Before Beiying put on the helmet, she suddenly smiled at the young technician. This is my own choice. Chapter 9 Chasing the Bunny. After saying this, Beiying put the helmet on his head and quietly watched Crossing Cheyenne outside the window. Because it was an old model Mecha, Crossing Cheyenne's neural synchronization was designed with a separate connection program from the beginning, which can be completely independent of the master control system. This has become the only hope for Zhu and Skankyang. Parameter calibration is complete. Are you ready? Beiying nodded. Good luck. The vast white light suddenly exploded in front of Beiying's eyes, instantly engulfing everything in sight. The infinitely overlapping electric current screams pierced Beiying's eardrum like an ice needle, making her lose her hearing. Beiying could not feel the existence of her hands and feet, and even her brain had forgotten how to drive her limbs, as if they were organs that humans had not yet degenerated in some distant era. A pain that hit the soul was burning Beiying's reason, as if thousands of hot maggots were gnawing at her torso. But she was like a floating corpse on the sea, her whole body submerged in the cold and dark water, without a trace of consciousness. Without consciousness, she could feel the pain that killed her. In a trance, Beiying saw a little girl in a white nightgown. The girl's hands were bloody, and even a complete male could not be seen. The white hair that fell to her shoulders blocked the girl's pale face, and only the tears that slid down from her chin kept beating the gravel and blood under the girl's knees. Beiying saw that the girl kept opening her mouth to say something, but in the end the girl couldn't make any sound. She just kept digging and scraping, like a lunatic who had lost his mind in front of the collapsed building. Behind the girl was a pile of rubble that was almost piled into a hill. If she encountered concrete fragments that she couldn't move, the girl would kneel and crawl to the other side to continue digging. No one stopped her, no one persuaded her. Beiying just stood beside the girl, watching the sun slowly set on the distant horizon, and the starlight dotted the brilliant Milky Way. The girl finally stopped until the incomplete white moon disappeared into the dark clouds. It was a bloodless hand, like a dry branch, quietly inserted in the ruins. The girl trembled all over and crawled towards there little by little. The bright red blood flowed like a trickle, leaving a vermilion trail where the girl crawled. Finally, the girl could no longer hold on, and her already swollen eye sockets burst again, and the turbid tears were full of wandering blood. She wanted to shout and call, but her throat was like a dry well that had long been cut off, and no sound could be squeezed out. Beiying just watched the girl open her mouth and hugged the hand with her delicate arms. Hate. If the general who is now regarded as a hero really loves his family, then Beiying's dead mother would not be buried under this ruin. From then on, Beiying no longer wanted to be Chen Weimin's daughter, and never heard anyone call her Chen Ying again. Beiying slowly walked to the girl's side and held her bloody hand. Mom. The girl's voice was hoarse like a traveler who was about to die of thirst in the desert. Mom is gone. Beiying took the opportunity to embrace the girl in his arms. Dad, why didn't he protect us? He has military orders to protect more people. That's an order that cannot be disobeyed. The girl hugged Beiying's neck and cried in her arms. Who should Beiying blame? A mecha that can't split itself, or two cities attacked at the same time. She has forgotten the last time she called dad, but compared to calling him father, Beiying still prefers to call him General Chen like everyone else. So many years have passed, and Beiying has long understood the choice he faced at the time. But understanding does not mean forgiveness. When facing the fusion beast that was enough to destroy the black sky, did he give the order just to save his daughter? Beiying had no way of knowing. The only thing she knew was the choice she made at the time. Protect everything she cherished. Suddenly, everything in front of Beiying disappeared. Ruins, high-rise buildings, and her past self. Instead, there was a strong sense of weightlessness, and Beiying was falling into a pure white abyss. Boom. When Beiying landed again, she found that she did not fall into a pulp as she imagined, but stood steadily, as if walking on flat ground. The physical laws of this space do not seem to follow reality. Beiying believed that she had just experienced a chasing rabbit. The so-called chasing rabbit is actually borrowed from the plot of a fairy tale. The protagonist fell into a wonderful underground world because of chasing a talking rabbit. In the process of neural synchronization of mecha pilots, chasing rabbits is used to refer to those who did not empty their minds before synchronization and failed to synchronize due to random thoughts. The ultimate form of chasing rabbits is that the driver falls into a very impressive memory in his subconscious and loses himself. But this is impossible to happen to Crossing Shine and Beiying. There are two types of neural synchronization: synchronization between humans and mechas, and synchronization between two pilots. The first type of synchronization is relatively easy. After all, the mecha is just a steel shell. As long as the amount of calculation required to control the mecha does not exceed the driver's brain load, the synchronization rate between the two is usually not lower than 80%. But it is more difficult to synchronize nerves between people. This is equivalent to directly inserting another consciousness into the other person's brain. This requires both parties to open their hearts completely and let the body adapt to and accept the instructions issued by the other consciousness. But even if both parties can be honest with each other, the synchronization rate between them may not meet the standard. The psychological defense line in the subconscious mind of a person cannot be controlled, and he will instinctively take physical or mental self-defense actions against external consciousness, such as metabolic disorders, limb spasms, or intermittent amnesia, mania, etc. In more serious cases, it may even cause the driver to have split personality. For this reason, those pilots who drive two-person mechas are usually relatives, couples, or friends who have played together since childhood. Because the two people have similar living habits, and they can accept most of each other's ideas psychologically and subconsciously. But Xingqian is a mecha controlled by a single person. Even if Beiying appears to chase the little rabbit, at most it will only cause a synchronization rate between her and Xingqian to decrease, rather than being deeply trapped in memories and losing herself. Because mechas cannot carry subconsciousness and memories, only another living mind can accommodate the conscious activities of the human brain. Could it be that Crossing Shine's self-awareness has really evolved to the same level as that of a normal human? If this is true, then Crossing Shine can no longer be considered a living mecha. Instead, he is a real life. Chapter 10. Searching for meaning. But if it was really as Beiying inferred, then she would have to face another problem. Was she synchronizing with a mecha, or with another pilot? If it was the former, then she should have switched to Crossing Shine's operating perspective. And now she was standing in a void of white. So, I'm in Crossing Shine's consciousness space. When Beiying realized this, everything around her changed again. The next second, Beiying was already standing in the hangar under the dark sky. The giant dome 100 meters high, the black and red paint, the giant fully automatic unmanned workbench rising in a ring, hundreds of lighting sources with different brightness. All the details here are exactly the same as the base in reality. The only difference is that there is no one here except Beiying. Crash. The sound of the surging waves suddenly came into Beiying's ears. She turned around abruptly and found that the door of the hangar was actually open. At the same time, a strong sense of uneasiness rose in her heart. But Beiying still ran all the way, passed through the crack in the door, and came to the platform outside the hangar that stretched for thousands of meters. Here, Beiying saw a scene that she would never forget in her life. Under the blood-red sky, Crossing Cheyenne, who was painted all black, was standing where he had fallen before. The entire ocean was dyed green by the blood of the monsters. Countless broken limbs and arms were floating on the sea, and countless monster corpses were like mountains rising from the bottom of the sea. But at the feet of Crossing Cheyenne, there was a dazzling red Mecha. Beiyang recognized it at a glance, the Red Hurricane. Now this mighty third generation Mecha has been dismantled into a pile of scrap metal, and even the dazzling Taiya thermal sword is only half left, inserted into the Red Hurricane's own power furnace. When Beiyang turned around again, she found that Zhenhe City in the distance had also turned into a ruin. Why? Beiyang couldn't understand why she saw such a picture. Is this the world that Crossing Cheyenne imagined in his subconscious mind? However, just when Beiyang had such an idea, she actually heard the answer clearly. Monsters are my enemies, and so are you. The one who spoke was none other than the giant Crossing Cheyenne standing in the green ocean. So you killed everyone. Beiyang had already guessed the answer. It was me. Crossing Cheyenne suddenly began to stride towards Beiyang, and a pair of bloody giant blades made people feel extremely cold. I burned my last drop of blood on the battlefield, but how did you treat me? Just after Crossing Cheyenne finished speaking, his shiny armor suddenly began to age rapidly, and countless battle scars were as shocking as branding. Bang! One of Crossing Cheyenne's iron arms suddenly broke, like a huge tombstone, falling into the green ocean, raising a 10-meter high wave. Then, it was Crossing Cheyenne's other arm. Then, it was Crossing Cheyenne's head, legs and waist. When Crossing Cheyenne fell in front of Beiyang, his body was already in pieces, leaving only the black power furnace on his torso still running. This is the ending I can foresee. At this moment, Crossing Cheyenne's voice came from every place in the space. You are also my enemy. We are not. Before Beiyang finished speaking, everything in the space was completely still, as if it was frozen. The next second, Beiyang's body was pinched in the hand of a huge fist. You are not? Crossing Cheyenne's body became intact again. Facing Crossing Cheyenne's questioning, Beiyang couldn't even speak. Her body was like a tomato that was about to burst. How did you treat me? Even if I don't go to the battlefield anymore, you will use me to scrap in the next training. Crossing Cheyenne's hand squeezed tighter and tighter. Do you have anything to explain? Beiyang couldn't make any sound, but her lips were still moving. She didn't know if Crossing Cheyenne could read lips, but this was her only way to express herself. I'm sorry. Please kill me. Bang. All the frozen pictures exploded with Beiyang's body at this moment, like a bucket of overturned paint, mixing all the colors together. Everything in the world seemed to be just a vivid painting. As long as Crossing Cheyenne tore it casually, the whole world would change, because of his will. In just a blink of an eye, Beiyang found herself in a warm room. She fell on the white tiles with blood all over her body, and her messy white hair blocked her red pupils that were about to go out. She was about to die. Beiyang thought so, and a weak smile appeared on the corner of her mouth. Every cell in her body was trembling with pain, and this might be what the other party felt when she was driving Crossing Cheyenne. Outside the window were lush green trees, and the bright sunshine fell on the blue desk. On the desk were comic books and game discs that Beiyang had never seen before. A young man who made Beiyang feel very familiar was leaning against the white wall, quietly watching her lying in a pool of blood. Although Beiyang had never seen the young man, her intuition told her that the man in front of her was Crossing Cheyenne. What are you laughing at? Yuzuro's pupils were as black as a black hole that could swallow light. I'm sorry for you. This is the punishment I deserve. Beiyang panted while staring at Crossing Cheyenne with her red eyes. But the others were not wrong. They just wanted to save you. Save me. Yuzuro stared at Beiyang with eyes as deep as the abyss. You aiming at my power reactor with your hot sword, does that count as saving me? We didn't know that it was your thing. Tears flowed from Beiyang's eyes and crossed her bloody face. We thought it was a parasite, so we wanted to remove it. A barely visible light flashed in Yuzuro's eyes. Why should I believe you? A person who is so lonely that people call him a lunatic. Yuzuro frowned slightly. I have no one to testify. You can look through my memories. Beiying's expression made Yuzao feel indescribable sadness. Or, kill me. Beiying knew that Crossing Shan's pursuit of the little rabbit came from his hatred for himself. If Crossing Shan's wishes were satisfied in the pursuit of the little rabbit, perhaps Crossing Shan would be able to regain his sanity. Of course, this also means that Beiying's consciousness will be severely damaged, and she will be lost in this space forever. Yuzao narrowed her eyes. Do you have any last words? Tell everyone that you are Crossing Shan, the living Crossing Shan. Beiying's red pupils were filled with relief. In this way, everyone won't treat you as a machine. Beiying's breathing became weaker and weaker, and the warm home appeared in front of her eyes again. Mom. Chapter 11 Return to Xingshan. Just when Beiying was about to close his eyes, Yuzao's pupils suddenly contracted. Yes, if even he himself was unwilling to prove that Crossing Shan was a living mecha, then why should he expect others not to regard him as a war machine? The space where Beiying and Yuzao were located changed again, but this time, the change was more violent. Crack. As the first crack appeared out of thin air in the air outside the window, countless cracking sounds rang out one after another. The entire space was like a broken mirror, and under his gaze, it turned into scattered stars and dust. The two finally stood in a pure white space. When Yuzao opened his eyes again, his pupils had returned to normal. I fell asleep. Yuzao rubbed his temples hard. He felt that he had a very long dream, but the self in the dream was completely out of his control and was completely shrouded in negative emotions. You are not asleep. The sudden voice scared Yuzao so much that he trembled all over. Beiying? Why are you here? No, where are we? The moment he saw Beiying, Yuzao's vague dream suddenly became clear, and he remembered every detail clearly. You didn't dream, but you showed very serious symptoms of chasing the little rabbit, and you have lost yourself. Beiying explained with surprising patience. We should still be in your consciousness space now. So, I killed you while chasing the little rabbit? Yuzao swallowed subconsciously. If you killed me, I wouldn't be standing here. Beiying's eyelids drooped slightly. But my behavior should not be forgiven. You did this to me before, on purpose. You wanted to take revenge on me. He vaguely remembered that he had looked through Beiying's memory at the last moment, but perhaps it was precisely because it was not his memory that he could not remember it clearly. Combined with the fact that he had felt Beiying's malice towards Crossing Shan during neural synchronization, perhaps everything made sense. Have I ever hurt you? Yuzao finally asked the question that had puzzled him for a long time. Beiying's eyes became extremely complicated as he looked at Crossing Shan. You haven't hurt anyone, I've just been avoiding. In the end, Beiying only gave this answer. Then cheer up. Beiying suddenly raised her head and looked at Yuzao in surprise. No matter what, I shouldn't take my anger out on you, not to mention that you are no longer that cold machine. I'm sorry. She wanted to explain something, but her throat was blocked by self-blame and guilt, and she could only apologize. We have tortured each other. If you feel that you owe me something, then wait until I think of the conditions before talking. Yuzao deliberately said it very lightly. Although he was not a living bodhisattva, he had more important things to do than to take revenge on the girl in front of him. By the way, why did you suddenly synchronize with me? Am I not dead? Don't you know what happened outside? Beiying didn't expect Yuzao to ask this question. Yuzao shook his head because he really didn't know. That's right, you have been chasing the little rabbit all the time. Beiying reacted, but can you really not sense it? Your power furnace is absorbing the electricity of the entire base. If it continues like this, Zhuan's Kankiang and Zhenhe City will be in danger. What the hell, my furnace has arrived. Yuzao remembered that he had always appeared in the image of Crossing Shan in chasing the little rabbit, and at that time Crossing Shan did have a black power furnace on his chest. He was 100% sure that this black power furnace was not Crossing Shan's original one, because he clearly remembered the feeling that the power furnace gave him, the kind of pleasure of crushing everything and being omnipotent. But now, let alone the power furnace, Yuzao couldn't even feel the connection between himself and Crossing Shan. If there was no Beiying in front of him who was synchronized with his nerves, Yuzao would doubt whether he had already started the next journey to another world. I can't sense my power furnace. Yuzao decided to tell the truth. You can't feel it? Beiyang was more surprised than Yuzao, but it's clearly running on your body right now. I'm not lying to you. I really can't feel it. Ever since Xingshan's power reactor went out, Yuzao felt like he had fallen into a deep sleep until an unknown energy woke him up. His consciousness had been in a drowsy state. But you said that the power reactor is yours. Beiyang's expression was both anxious and puzzled. If even you can't control it, then how can we stop it? Do you believe me? Yuzao's expression became very serious. Beiyang nodded without hesitation. Then wait for me for 2 minutes. Although Yuzao knew that every second they wasted now would put the outside world in a greater crisis, he had to figure out the whole story first. Okay. Beiyang decisively agreed to Yuzao's request. Do you need me to do anything else? No, just wait for me. After speaking, Yuzao closed his eyes. Soul machine login successful. Welcome to the evolution system. Searching for the machine log. In less than a minute, Yuzao had read through everything that had happened in the outside world from the time he lost consciousness to the time he was awakened by Beiyang. The key to the problem lies in his current machine state. Due to the serious damage to the machine, the soul machine protection mechanism was triggered, and the system has temporarily cut off the sensory connection between you and the machine. It was precisely because he lost the sensory connection with the machine that he relied entirely on the attached intelligence system after the power reactor was automatically installed. Due to the cutting experiment by Red Hurricane and Dr. Chris, the intelligence system directly regarded the Black Sky base as a hostile unit, which was also the main source of his hatred and anger in chasing the bunny, because this hostile judgment had penetrated into his subconscious. The way to reconnect is 1. The system detects that your machine integrity is higher than 50% and will automatically restore the sensory connection. 2. When any external link with your identification features attempts to connect to the body, the perception link will be automatically restored. The first method is definitely too late. At present, the power system of the entire Zhuangzi is in a semi-paralyzed state, and all the installation equipment that can repair Xingshan has been deactivated. The second method can obviously only be triggered when the machine soul has multiple bodies, because the only container of the machine soul is the Mecha. Once it leaves the Mecha, the machine soul can only survive for 5 minutes in other digital storage devices. And this 5 minutes is the upper limit. The smaller the data capacity of the storage device, the shorter the survival time of the machine soul. I have a way. Yuzao opened his eyes, but the risk is very high for both of us. What way? Beiyang is least afraid of risk. Does your neural synchronization device have a data storage device? There is an exchanger for exchanging neural electrical signals, but the capacity is only 5T. Beiyang immediately thought of the small device on the back of the helmet. 5 tons. Yuzao's consciousness can only survive in it for 10 seconds. Chapter 12 Mutual Trust. I need you to take my consciousness out and restore the connection between me and my body from the outside. Yuzao decided to take a gamble. How to do it specifically? Beiyang didn't quite understand this abstract statement, but it didn't stop her from following the steps. First, I need you to forcibly disconnect the neural synchronization, instead of exiting normally. Yuzao began to explain step by step. In this way, the neural synchronization between us will remain for a short time, and my consciousness can also take this opportunity to stay in the buffer area of the interactor, but only for 10 seconds. 10 seconds. Does it start counting from the forced disconnection? Beiyang realized the risk here. Yes, it starts counting from the moment you disconnect. Forcibly disconnecting neural synchronization usually causes a huge impact on the driver's brain nerves, causing dizziness, vomiting or short-term tinnitus at the mildest, and coma, shock or damage to the hippocampus at the worst. What will happen if it exceeds the time limit? Beiyang vaguely sensed the danger behind these 10 seconds. I will disappear from this world. Beiyang clenched his fists. What should I do in these 10 seconds? Find any interface that can connect to the base's main control system and plug the interface into it. Then what? Wait until I reconnect to the body. Yuzao tried to make the process sound easy. Do you believe me? Beiyang knew that Yuzao had put his life in her hands. Otherwise I wouldn't have proposed this plan. Then are you ready? Beiying smiled at Yuzaro. Okay. Yuzaro took a deep breath and tried to relax his mind. 3, 2, 1. Begin. As soon as the voice fell, Beiying and Yuzaro both disappeared in the white space. Beep. 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 The familiar alarm sounded in Beiying's ears again, and her consciousness returned to her body. But Beiying's stress reaction was more exaggerated than she thought. She felt as if there was a blender in her head that was constantly stirring her brain. Under the severe dizziness and headache, Beiying barely unplugged the interface on the back of the helmet and stood up shakily with her body. She had wasted 3 seconds. What are you doing? Is the problem solved? Beiying could vaguely hear Dr. Chris questioning her, but she had no time to pay attention to him. Now even breathing made her feel nauseous, let alone speaking. The socket of the smart terminal was only 1 step away from her, but this 1 step made Beiying feel as if it was the end of the world. She had 4 seconds left, but just as Beiying raised her left foot, her body lost balance and fell forward. At this moment, the technician who had instructed her rushed up and held up Beiying's body that was about to fall. 2 seconds. Beiying used up all her strength to insert the interactive device into the interface. After doing this last action, Beiying fainted completely. Time passed by minute. The lights became dimmer and dimmer, and the alarm sounded in the high walls, like a farewell bird hovering over everyone's heads. Under the night sky, the entire black sky was like a gradually extinguished flame, and the increasingly weak light and heat continued to blend into the cold night and disappear. Why is Crossing Cheyenne still absorbing energy? Drive Chris was the first to break the oppressive silence in the command room. He glared fiercely at the white shadow lying unconscious on the chair. What the hell is she doing? First she forcibly disconnected the neural synchronization, and then plugged the interactor into the interface without saying a word. Wait a minute. General Chen stopped Dr. Chris from venting his emotions. He just looked at the clock on the wall quietly. There are only 2 minutes left, and the whole base will be completely plunged into darkness. Crossing Cheyenne. The white shadow, who was still in a coma, murmured Crossing Cheyenne's name. Yuzaro had successfully restored the perception link a few minutes ago. But this is just the beginning of another nightmare. He now understands why the machine soul protection mechanism is what it does. The moment he and Crossing Cheyenne merged into one again, his consciousness had a perception deviation. How should a human consciousness without a head and limbs survive? Can he still think? Will he be aware? Originally, these were not within the scope of Yuzaro's thinking, because he was already an electronic ghost without a body. But fate is so unpredictable. Even if he has become a group of data, deep in his consciousness, Yuzaro still firmly believes that he is still a living person. That's why he has the perceptions that only humans have in the consciousness space, vision, hearing, pain, etc. If he wanted, he could transform into anything in that space, a bird, a tree, or even a Crossing Cheyenne who was thousands of meters high. But Yuzaro still unconsciously turned into the appearance of his previous life, and his subconscious also simulated all human perceptions and nerve reactions. It was this firm self-cognition that caused Yuzaro to fall into perceptual bias immediately after taking over Crossing Cheyenne, and turned into a bunch of illogical garbled code. Yuzaro once again fell into chasing the little rabbit. At this time, he had turned into countless scattered fragments, and each fragment had its own independent personality and thinking, like countless victims struggling and drowning. Which one is a real self? He must fundamentally accept the fact that he is no longer a human being in order to completely get rid of this perceptual bias and become a machine soul that is not affected by phantom pain. Who are you? I'm Yuzaro. Is Yuzaro a human? Yes. Then why are you still alive? A piece of fragment turned into starlight in the contradiction and disappeared. The same question was being asked among all the fragments at the same time, but only one of them gave a different answer. This unique Yuzaro was immersed in an imaginary memory. He returned to the earth again, but he returned in the form of a steel body. The world immediately exploded, and everyone rushed to discuss this incredible thing. People interviewed him, followed him, and tested him. Because he was a Mecha, an iron man with human thinking. But no one treated Yuzaro as a human. Everyone kept a distance from him, and naughty children even threw stones at him. In this way, Yuzao walked alone for a long time and far, and finally arrived at the city he was familiar with, and found the familiar door. But Yuzao's fingers still stopped in front of the security door, and he didn't knock it after all. Before going downstairs, he looked at the word "fu" posted on the door for a few times in a lonely manner, and then went downstairs in a trance. But just when Yuzao walked to the door of the unit, he ran into the person he wanted to see, but didn't dare to see. The next second, the white-haired mother threw away everything in her hands and hugged Yuzao's cold body, while the father beside her quietly took off his glasses and wiped away the turbid tears from the corners of his eyes. "Son, welcome home." Yuzao suddenly woke up from his memory. He also heard the questioning. Is Yuzao a human? Yes, but not. Then what are you? I can be a machine soul, crossing Cheyenne, or anything that exists. None of these are you. No, you are wrong. Yuzao firmly refuted the other party. No matter what I become, I will always be Yuzao. The questioning voice disappeared, and all the fragments merged into one at this moment, turning into a floating human-shaped white mist. Then, Yuzao was swallowed up by a dazzling white light. Chapter 13 The Real Purpose. General, the main control system has returned to normal. Just as Dr. Chris was about to find a way to forcibly wake up Beiying, the shrill alarm stopped abruptly. The dozens of cables connected to Crossing Cheyenne's torso became dim again, like broken ropes quickly falling off from the interface with black smoke. The power system is also gradually recovering. We succeeded. The technician looked at the rising power readings on the panel with joy. What's the status of Crossing Cheyenne? General Chen's words made everyone who had just breathed a sigh of relief nervous again. This broken Mecha was still hanging in front of everyone. The power of the power furnace has dropped to normal levels, and the auxiliary visual module is turned on. In addition, the technician's expression was a little ugly. It is impossible to access deep data including system logs. All documents are encrypted by unknown algorithms. It must be her. Dr. Chris immediately pointed the finger at Beiying. The problem lies in that switch. The problem has been solved. The technician stood up and pushed back Dr. Chris's words. The main control system is normal. The power is running normally. This is the most important thing. Don't you understand what I'm saying? Crossing Cheyenne is still hanging there, and there may be problems at any time. Dr. Chris only cares about this issue. No, you are wrong. Leo, you also stood up. The problem is not Crossing Cheyenne, but the power reactor. You have tried to separate the power reactor from him, right? This sentence made Dr. Chris speechless, as if he was mocking the incompetence of him and his assistant. I want to find out what that girl went through in neural synchronization, and why Crossing Cheyenne started on his own. Because Crossing Cheyenne may be self-aware. This time, it was the chief technology officer of Zuan's Kankian who stood up. We have already seen some clues from the combat simulation records of the past 3 months. General, Nina and I have changed our minds. Dr. Chris clenched his fists. Please pack up the power reactor and Crossing Cheyenne's torso tonight. We will bring it back to headquarters tomorrow morning for further research. You can't take Crossing Cheyenne away. He is our hero. Beiying, who had just woken up from a coma, forced herself to sit up, and the 2 guards who escorted her over helped her up. According to what you said, a mecha can become a living thing like a human, so its research value must be enough to change the technological development of the entire human race. Dr. Chris smiled proudly. Let's stop the fast today. Miss Beiying should have a good rest. As the driver of Xingshan, you will go back to the headquarters with us tomorrow to undergo some routine tests. General, everyone, Nina and I will take our leave first. Dr. Chris took Nina's shoulder and walked towards the door together under the gaze of everyone. But General Chen's next sentence made the 2 of them stop in their tracks. I'm sorry, Dr. Chris, I can't let you take Crossing Cheyenne and Beiying away. General, do you know what you are saying? Dr. Chris looked at General Chen in disbelief. According to the Watcher Alliance Function Division rules, the Omega Research Complex has the first right to any undiscovered objects, technologies, and samples. Before coming to the command room, I just received a request for help from the United Front base. General Chen's face became very serious. They were attacked by a tide of beasts from the Storm Sea, among which there were 7 level 4 monsters counted alone, and there were even more than 16 level 3 monsters. When everyone heard the word beast tide, everyone's face was covered with a shadow. The bases that were also attacked included the Golden Gate and the Red Fortress, but the United Front encountered the largest scale of attack. At 6:49 this afternoon, the entire base was declared broken, the coastal defense line collapsed completely, and everyone began to retreat inland. At this point, the aura of General Chen almost solidified the air around him. This is why I came to the control room in person. The Xiangan Dragon boat will arrive at Zuan's Kankiang in half an hour and drop the Red Hurricane to Lishuan City to help them resist the beast tide, but this will cause the defense level of Zuan's Kankiang to drop significantly. General Chen raised his chin slightly and continued in a decisive tone. I will not waste any combat power. If there is no problem with the power reactor on Xingshan's chest, then he can continue to fight. Are you crazy? Dr. Chris almost trembled as he said this. You wanted to go to the battlefield with this alien power reactor? It can draw electricity from the entire base in the last second, and it can point its gun at you in the next second. I don't know if there will be any problems with Xingshan later, but I believe what Beiying said. Since Xingshan is still on our side, he is still a member of Zuan's Kankiang, not an undiscovered object as you say. A bunch of lunatics. Chris swept his angry eyes over everyone present. We will go back to the headquarters now to report the situation. I hope you don't regret what we said today. No need to see you off. Chris and Nina rushed out, and General Chen didn't even turn his head back. General, are you serious? After the footsteps in the corridor faded away, the adjutant asked hesitantly. Do I look like I'm joking? General Chen put his hands behind his back and just glanced at him, blocking the adjutant's words. Notify all mechanical maintenance teams to start reassembling Xingshan as quickly as possible now. Notify me immediately after it's done. Everyone else should return to their posts now. The base has entered the second level combat readiness state. We must beware of attacks that may come at any time. As soon as General Chen gave the order, everyone immediately rushed. Beiying, go and have a rest first, and then come to my office with me. I have something to tell you. Before Beiying could react, General Chen walked out of the control room quickly. Half an hour later, Beiying took the elevator to the top floor of the Black Sky, which was 120 meters high. Do you still want to continue driving Xingshan? General Chen did not sit on the chair that symbolized the highest command authority, but sat on the sofa with Beiying. Xingshan is alive and does not need a driver. Beiying admitted this fact, even though it would make her lose her Mecha. Then you will continue to be Xingshan's pilot. General Chen gave an unexpected answer. Why? Beiying couldn't understand at all. This is only temporary. Although I believe what you said, since you can't provide evidence that there is no problem with Xingshan and his power reactor, I have to take out an insurance policy. General Chen patiently explained. You are the only one who understands Xingshan's thoughts, so before you provide evidence, you are his guarantor. Okay, I promise you. Beiying hesitated for a moment and gave an answer. I knew you would agree, so you should get ready now. I have a task for you. What task? The Black Sky doesn't keep useless people. As the first generation of Mecha, Xingshan can no longer fight against the current monsters, so I want you to take him to do an upgrade. War Factory? Beiying thought that this was the only place where he could upgrade the Mecha. But they are in the same group as Omega. We just offended Chris. How can we go there to upgrade? No, we should go to the Silent Cemetery. Chapter 14. Uneasy Omen. How many chances does a person have to see the sea in his life? Crossing Cheyenne stopped and turned to look at the ocean beside him. He was walking along the coastline, the endless waves slapping his alloy ankles, and the fishy sea breeze seemed too cold at night. But Yuziro couldn't feel all this, just like a spectator outside the screen, who could only satisfy himself with imagination. In his eyes, there was only endless darkness and the few insignificant lights from Crossing Cheyenne. Why stop? Beiying looked at Yuziro standing beside him with some confusion. The human image composed of holographic projection was exactly the same as what Beiying had seen in synchronization before. Because I didn't see the sea in my previous life. Yuziro wanted to say this, but he is now Crossing Cheyenne, a warrior who has been fighting monsters in the ocean since the launch day. If you are tired, let me walk. Beiying stretched, and the close-fitting combat uniform perfectly interpreted the curves of the girl's youthful and energetic figure at this moment. Since Crossing Shine was reorganized in the Black Sky, Beiying learned about the autopilot function from Yuzao. In short, Yuzao can replace Beiying in some simple actions. It's okay, I just feel that the wind direction has changed. Yuzao found a random reason to cover himself, but he was actually somewhat relieved by Beiying's concern. After all, the other party did make a change. However, the current Crossing Shine is not actually controlled by Yuzao. It is the holographic high intelligence AI interactive system he ordered from the mall that is driving. Black technology is so good. Yuzao is a black-hearted middleman who eats the benefits and doesn't have to do the work. If it weren't for you, I don't know how tired I would be. Beiying clenched his fists. Why can Red Hurricane take the dragon boat, but we have to go by ourselves? Beiying still remembers Meng Changqing's smug face before he boarded the Xiangan dragon boat. To be honest, Yuzao also wanted to take a dragon boat, not because he was afraid of losing face, but because he simply wanted to get on the dragon boat to broaden his horizons. Xiangan, the first aerial fortress independently developed by Kayan State, was originally designed only for long-distance transportation of mechas, but after many discussions, it has been transformed into a self-circulating assault-level combat unit. Judging from the scale alone, its volume is not much smaller than the Black Sky base, and it is precisely this terrifying size that allows it to carry 5 mechas at the same time for long-distance transportation. At present, Kayan State has 3 dragon boats of the same size, and it is said that there is also a top-secret project under development, which is based on dragon boat technology. Maybe because our journey is relatively short, the dragon boat is not on the way. Yuzao found a seemingly reasonable explanation, but he knew the reason in his heart. Because we are going to the Silent Cemetery to pick up rags, and they are going on an expedition. The Silent Cemetery is a Mecha recycling station located at the midpoint of the north and south coastlines of Kayan State. Mechas that are damaged or no longer on the battlefield due to various reasons will be sent to their own mecha graves by various countries, where they will be dismantled and recycled. Crossing Shine was lucky. As the only survivor of the first generation of mechas, he has become a hero in many people's hearts and a symbol of human indomitable spirit, so he was able to escape the fate of being dismantled after retirement. Forget it. The place they are going to is much more dangerous. If you are not careful, you will die. Don't fight with them. Beiying rarely entangled in this kind of differential treatment, because only she knew that Crossing Shine's upgrade this time was the life-saving money of Zuan's Kankiang. When Beiying and General Chen communicated alone, she learned about the huge pressure Zuan's Kankian was facing at present. Their entire Watcher Alliance was hit by the global boycott last year and had to shrink its scale significantly, which directly led to the Alliance's budget this year being cut by half. The number of mechas retained by Zuan's Kankian is already considered large among all bases, but this also means that the expenses they bear are several times that of other bases. Therefore, Zuan's Kankian decided to open the Silent Cemetery, which was originally under its control, to the market, and completely package the operation to the contractor, earning fixed rent and floating transaction commissions from it. But even if this is achieved, the capital chain of Zuan's Kankian will be completely broken in 6 months. If it cannot get new financial support, Zuan's Kankian will be permanently closed. In this case, sending Xingshan to the war factory for a formal upgrade will make Zuan's Kankian go bankrupt next month. So General Chen took a different approach and took out 3 months of funds to order a complete set of worn-out 3rd generation mecha parts from the Silent Cemetery. Although it is not as good as the formal upgrade of the war factory, it is enough to raise Xingshan's combat power by several levels. To describe this deal in General Chen's own words, instead of worrying about tomorrow, which may not exist, it is better to survive today at all costs. This is also his judgment on the next part of this war. I thought you would complain a little more. Yuzao obviously saw that Beiying was hiding something from him. I'm just telling the truth. Beiying curled his lips. The funds of Black Sky are very tight. The Silent Cemetery was originally under the jurisdiction of our Legion. Later, after it was contracted out, according to the agreement, we can only get more discounts when buying things, and we can't get them for free. The cost of mechas is not cheap. If the contractor asked us to get them for free every day, we would have gone bankrupt long ago. Yuzao easily saw the reason, but if we hadn't driven Chris away, maybe we could have gone to the war factory to upgrade. If Chris hadn't been driven away, you would have been captured and dissected by Omega now. Beiyang glared at Yuzao unhappily. Wait. Yuzao didn't continue to argue with Beiyang, but turned his head again to look at the endless sea. The cold sea breeze scraped across Crossing Shine's armor like a sharp knife, but still couldn't shake the giant standing on the shore. Is there anything going on? Beiyang tensed his body, ready to control Crossing Shine to avoid possible dangers at any time. Her eyes swept across the holographic interface floating in the air. As the ripples on the radar spread outward with Crossing Shine as the center, Beiyang felt more and more strange. The energy radar did not detect any threat. The wind direction has changed. Can you please stop joking like that? Beiyang almost jumped down from the control position to kick Yuzao. I'm not kidding you. The wind direction has really changed. I think your head has been blown silly by the wind. This is the seaside. It's abnormal if there is no wind. Beiyang was too lazy to pay attention to the somewhat neurotic Crossing Shine. He directly cancelled the designated driver and controlled Crossing Shine to continue on his way. Yuzao did not continue to argue with Beiyang because his energy radar and night vision did not find anything abnormal. But he always felt that something was watching Crossing Shine, but the sight was very faint, as if it came from the clouds and starry sky above his head. To be on the safe side, Yuzao immediately opened the mall page. He originally planned to check for emissions after the silent cemetery was upgraded, but now he must first ensure that he would not have an accident on the road. Exchange successful. Thank you for your patronage. This should be safe enough. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 15 Silent Cemetery. Beiyang's temper was really the most stubborn Yuzao had ever seen. It took a total of 6 hours to get from the dark sky to the silent cemetery. The last time the two quarreled, Crossing Shine had only completed 1 hour. Now, Beiyang has been controlling Crossing Shine to complete the remaining 5 hours. During this period, Yuzao tried several times to persuade Beiyang to let him drive for him, but Beiyang didn't say a word, didn't even look at him, just kept walking. Yuzao had no experience in coaxing girls in his previous life, let alone meeting a girl with a bad temper like Beiyang. Unknowingly, the two were approaching their destination. The warm lights gradually enlarged in Crossing Shine's vision, and several huge cargo ships were docked at the dock not far away. In the towering walls, several tall towers rose from the ground, and helicopters would take off and land on the top of the towers from time to time, like migratory birds temporarily resting on the treetops. Beiyang, who had a stern face, couldn't help but widen her eyes after seeing this scene. This was her first time visiting the silent cemetery, but she never expected that a Mecha cemetery would be so lively. Is this a market or a recycling station? Yuzao was also shocked by the scene in front of him. He thought it was a huge garbage dump full of steel scraps, but everything in the silent cemetery looked orderly and even a little prosperous. Dung. Crossing Shine walked towards the silent cemetery with an even pace, but what Beiyang didn't know was that the people at the port all ran into the wall after seeing Crossing Shine from a distance. Stop. Otherwise we will open fire immediately. Before entering the offshore area, all the turrets on the coast were aimed at Crossing Shine. Beiyang stopped immediately. She didn't understand why she was stopped. Report your number and information, and tell me why you are here. The other party's tone in the communication device seemed quite alert. T-001 Mecha Xingshan, pilot Beiyang, belongs to the Black Sky base of Kyan Country. I came here to upgrade my Mecha. Didn't General Chen tell you in advance? The other side of the communicator fell into a brief silence, as if to confirm the authenticity of the information. There are problems with your Mecha identification code and driver information. Please wait where you are. We will make further confirmation with Black Sky. Beiying clenched her fists and stared at the closed door of the silent cemetery. The Mecha identification code should be caused by Xingshan's replacement of the system, but the driver information is her most sensitive issue. Although she has participated in the defense of Black Sky with Xingshan and obtained General Chen's permission to become Xingshan's driver, the non-stop Black Sky has no time to help Beiying complete the Iron Pilot certification. This also means that once she leaves Black Sky, no one will recognize her as an Iron Pilot. Meng Changqing called her half-baked because she has not received systematic teaching in the Iron Pilot Academy and does not even have the status of a registered student. Her driving skills were completely derived from the teachings of the two pilots of the Raider and repeated simulation training, but compared with the content taught in the Iron Pilot Academy, what Beiying learned was just the tip of the iceberg. During this 1-minute waiting time, Beiying was like a student who got full marks, but was suspected of cheating, standing at the door of the classroom waiting for the teacher's judgment. It's not the grades that measure a driver, but the battle record. At this moment, Yu Zhao's voice came from behind Beiying. As long as you can treat the Mecha you drive as a partner, you will definitely become an excellent driver. Do other mechas have souls? Beiying's mood was indeed much better after hearing Yu Zhao's words. I don't know. Yu Zhao's eyes twitched. He didn't expect Beiying to suddenly ask such a profound question, but whether it has or not, the Mecha is the only existence you can trust on the battlefield. Beiying didn't answer, but nodded with a degree that others couldn't see. Information confirmed. Entry allowed. Please go to hangar number 4 to dock your Mecha. While chatting and laughing, the silent cemetery had verified the information of the two, and all the guns aimed at Xingshan changed their directions one by one. Beiying followed the guidance of the drone and parked Xingshan on the Mecha support frame of hangar number 4 and followed the guide alone to take the elevator. But in fact, the connection between Yu Zhao and Beiying still exists. Since the last time the neural synchronization was forcibly disconnected, the two have established a wonderful but weak synesthesia. This synesthesia does not require any equipment to maintain, and both parties can sense each other's existence. Once the other party is threatened with life, the other party will know immediately. However, compared with this weak synesthesia, both of them chose a more convenient means. Communication link. Beiying's communicator was attached to her fair neck, integrating a microphone and a receiver, and even came with an emergency pulse electric shock function. And Yu Zhao did not plan to stop the machine to rest. After installing the new power reactor, he no longer needed auxiliary charging, and could maintain operation at normal power. However, he decided to put himself into low power sleep mode like a normal Mecha, so that others would not think that crossing Cheyenne had a problem. Welcome, Xiao Bei, come and sit down. As soon as the elevator door opened, a middle-aged man in formal clothes and gold-rimmed glasses immediately came up and patted Beiying's shoulder cordially. Beiying did not expect that the elevator door on the top floor of this high tower would lead to a reception room without even a corridor. Unlike the steel alloy outside, the entire reception room was decorated in a slightly retro European style. Mahogany display cabinets and tables and chairs, pure wool carpets that covered half of the reception room, 5 crystal chandeliers carved into the shape of candlesticks, and granite floors that were polished to a shine. The whole room was filled with an intoxicating tea fragrance, and even Beiying, who did not drink tea, felt relaxed and happy. Since this planet entered the era of technological explosion, these decorations made of natural materials are extremely expensive in the market. And for Beiying, who has lived in a steel siege since childhood, he has only seen such scenes in artworks. General Chen, he only said on the phone that he wanted to order a set of upgrade parts, and he didn't tell me which mecha it was for. The middle-aged man smiled and picked up the purple clay teapot and poured Beiying a cup of tea. If you know it's for crossing Cheyenne, I have to give you a 50% discount no matter what. Beiying said thank you a little late. Her eyes were still curiously looking at everything in the room, as if she was really in a gorgeous dream. General Chen and I are old acquaintances. Before the war started, I invited him to my company as a military consultant, but he was determined to serve the country and didn't agree, but I admire his spirit from the bottom of my heart. Beiying held up the teacup and listened to the middle-aged man reminiscing about the past, as if all kinds of scenes of their experiences in the past really appeared in front of her. Several times, she almost subconsciously learned to taste the tea like the middle-aged man, but her instinct not to drink tea still made her body resist. But this did not prevent her from immersing herself in the past stories told by the middle-aged man. On the other end of the communicator, Yuzao could clearly feel that the connection between Beiying and himself had become somewhat blurred, as if the other party had completely forgotten his existence. Snap. At this moment, the lights in the hangar went out completely. Chapter 16 Keep Away. Dingling. The wall clock rang a clear bell, and the hour hand pointed to 3 o'clock in the morning, interrupting the middle-aged man who was talking about the climax of the past. Oh, look at my brain. I forgot that Xiaobei, you came here overnight. The middle-aged man clapped his hands, and his kind smile was a little more apologetic. He hurriedly called the secretary standing beside him. Chief Chen is really, how could you let you drive a Mecha here by yourself? Quick, arrange a better room for Xiaobei, let her have a good sleep. The secretary immediately walked to Beiying with a smile, and invited Beiying to follow her in a gentle and polite tone. This meticulous and thoughtful service made Beiying not know how to refuse for a while. At this moment, a trace of electricity suddenly rushed out of the communicator on Beiying's neck, which made her tremble on the spot. And this electricity also made Beiying notice her own strange mental state, as if she had just woken up from a dream. On the other end of the communicator, Yuzao found that he had regained a weak synesthesia with Beiying, which meant that the other party had noticed his existence again. Yuzao immediately told her current situation. They locked the hangar door. Beiying immediately realized that she seemed to be led by the nose by the two, and even almost forgot why she came to the silent cemetery. No, I don't need to rest. Beiying regained her usual expression of not allowing strangers to enter, and refused to continue following the secretary to the elevator. How is that possible? It will take at least half a day to walk from the black sky to here. Xiaobei, if you are not sleepy, wait in the room first. Uncle will find you the best masseur to relax your body. The middle-aged man pretended to frown, but his face was still the caring smile of an elder. I said, I'm not tired. Beiying's cold tone was like a basin of ice water poured on the enthusiastic faces of the middle-aged man and the secretary, which lowered the temperature in the room a lot. Miss Bei, the boss is also concerned about you. The secretary tried to make peace, and turned around to hold Beiying's hand. Snap. Beiying waved her hand and slapped the other person's hand away from midair. She didn't like others touching her. When will crossing Shan be able to upgrade? The middle-aged man did not answer Beiying's question directly, but laughed heartily. He picked up Beiying's into-shaped teacup, smiled and shook his head, and poured the cold tea into the teapot. It seems that not everyone knows how to enjoy it. It's a pity not to drink such good tea. Beiying narrowed her eyes slightly, remembering that she smelled the intoxicating tea fragrance. As soon as she entered the door, it was from that time that her brain seemed to be filled with glue, and she didn't know what she was doing in a daze. I don't drink tea. That's because I took it for granted. Commander Chen used to love to drink this dragon bud the most, but since the war began, he didn't even touch tea. You didn't answer my question. Beiying, who had suffered a loss once, was very alert, and no longer followed the middle-aged man's train of thought. What young people lack most is patience and calmness. The middle-aged man smiled and pointed at Beiying. The last time I saw you, you still knew to say hello to your uncle. I don't remember you, and I don't want to know you. Beiying clenched his fist. You'd better answer my question now. The middle-aged man smiled and pushed his glasses. You kid. Bang. Before the middle-aged man finished speaking, Beiying straightened her legs and kicked the heavy tea table towards him. But before Beiying's legs were fully exerted, the secretary standing next to her grabbed Beiying's arm. The overturned tea table eventually changed direction and knocked down a display cabinet full of porcelain on the side. Take your hand away. Beiying clenched her hand back and grabbed the other person's arm directly. She pulled hard and dragged the other person towards herself. Seeing that Beiying's fist was about to touch her, the secretary suddenly let go of Beiying's hand, leaned down, and while avoiding the fist, she also tore open the buttons on her chest. Beiying failed to hit the secretary in the end, and all that was left in her hand was the dress that the other party was wearing. If I were you, I would take off my shoes as well. Beiying threw away the coat in her hand and glanced at the high heels on the other party's feet. It's not necessary to deal with a little kid like you. As soon as the voice fell, the secretary took the initiative to raise her long legs and attacked Beiying's head. Beiying wanted to block it with her arms, but she was surprised to find that the power of this kick was much greater than she imagined, and even the air around her was trembling. So Beiying forcibly retracted her arms and turned sideways to avoid the kick. After only 2 collisions, Beiying quickly analyzed the opponent's fighting style. She and Beiying are both people who rely more on leg attacks. This is because their body shapes are more suitable for playing the advantages of long legs, and it is also because it is not easy for women to gain an advantage in upper limb strength competition. But the opponent is obviously more specialized in leg training and ignores upper limb strength, so that the two are not at the same level in close combat. Then Beiying's next tactics are very obvious. Swish. The opponent had no intention of stopping. After the first kick missed, he turned around and kicked the second kick. Beiying had no time to make any other moves, so she could only continue to dodge. A rage was accumulating in Beiying's chest. After dodging left and right, there was not much space left behind her. What she hated most was that others used their height advantage to suppress her. Just by visual estimation, the secretary's height was at least 1.75 meters, while Beiying was half a head shorter than the opponent. She was only 1.64 meters. This resulted in the opponent kicking her, but she couldn't touch the opponent. The secretary was also very smart. She took advantage of this advantage and kept suppressing Beiying with the maximum distance of her legs, not giving the opponent a chance to breathe. After a few rounds, the secretary had forced Beiying into a corner, which forced Beiying, who had no way to retreat, to choose to use her upper limbs to block the next attack. Bang! Even though Beiying had used the hardest elbow to resist, the strong force still hit her bones like a lead ball. Beiying could only endure the pain and use the force to roll on the ground, covering her arm and preparing for the next attack. Heh. The secretary looked down at the somewhat embarrassed girl with a hint of joy in her eyes, but she was not going to stop her attack. With another heavy kick, the secretary directly kicked the wall clock to pieces. The little space that Beiying had just gained was compressed again, and now she was only one body length away from the wall. Where are you going to hide this time? Although such a violent attack was more laborious, the secretary still had the advantage after all, and did not give Beiying any chance to fight at close range. Looking at Beiying's stubborn but anxious expression, the secretary's mouth corners slightly raised. She raised her slender right leg, almost using all her strength, and kicked Beiying hard. Chapter 17 Violent Element. Underestimating the enemy is always the most unacceptable mistake in a fight. When Beiying found that the opponent was constantly attacking, in order to distance herself, she decided to wait for the opportunity. In fact, she was fully capable of launching a counterattack in advance, but she still chose to expose a flaw. And now, the time has come. Beiying suddenly tensed up and dodged backwards in advance when the secretary raised her foot. The next second, she suddenly raised her left leg and caught up with the secretary's leg that had not yet completely fallen in the same direction at a faster speed. When the secretary realized Beiying's intention, it was too late. The leg with the afterimage had already whipped behind her right leg that had kicked in vain like a snake whip. Crack. After a crisp bone sound, the secretary's body lost balance on the spot and even rolled several times after falling to the ground before finally stopping. In terms of leg length, Beiying definitely couldn't reach the secretary's body. In terms of attack speed, Beiying's slightly petite physique was faster than the opponent. But in terms of leg strength, she did not have the upper hand. Therefore, Beiying must play to her advantage and speed, and find a way to avoid the disadvantages of leg length and leg strength. This is why she has been choosing to dodge. With the opponent's offensive momentum, she will inevitably consume a lot of physical strength in a short period of time. The body will not lie. No matter how determined a person is, the fatigue of the flesh will be revealed. In order to test the opponent's strength and physical reserves, and to paralyze the opponent's nerves, Beiying chose to use her elbow to take the opponent's attack after being forced into a narrow space for the first time. The power of this attack was obviously weaker than the secretary's first attack, and it was already to the point that Beiying could barely bear it. In addition, she used the hardest elbow joint to hit the opponent's calf, which was bound to reduce the secretary's next threat to a higher level. Beiying also seized this opportunity. After actively showing her expression and state of being defeated by the opponent, the secretary began to believe that her next attack would end the battle. As a result, she kicked out a slow attack that she didn't even notice and was caught by Beiying, who had saved most of his physical strength. To be on the safe side and to completely eliminate the possibility that the opponent could overwhelm her in terms of strength, Beiying did not even choose to attack with her right leg, but directly used her left leg to chase the secretary's right leg in the same direction before it could retract. Beiying was also good at legs and feet, so how could she not know that most of the weaknesses of the legs were actually hidden in the back of the legs? So she kicked the secretary's knees, directly eliminating the possibility of the opponent continuing to fight. Of course, according to Beiying's usual style, the opponent might not even be able to walk for the rest of his life. At this moment, the secretary was lying on the ground, holding her knees wrapped in black thin socks with both hands and wailing. The high heels she was wearing on her feet also tilted to one side during the tumble just now. Beiying shrugged, stepped over the opponent directly, and approached the middle-aged man step by step. "It's your turn." Beiying didn't intend to repeat the question again. She was sure that anyone with normal intelligence would not forget what her question was just now. As long as the other party didn't answer, she would just do it. Facing the Beiying, who was pressing forward step by step, the smile on the middle-aged man's face had long disappeared, replaced by an extremely cold anger. This kind of anger was not written on his face, but was deeply engraved in his eyes and aura, like the black clouds before the storm. You know it is right above your head, and may fall at any time. But this kind of restrained anger is not what Beiying cares about. Although she is already an adult, she has always written her feelings on her face. Your family education is too poor. The middle-aged man straightened his collar, without any fear on his face. You talk too much nonsense. Beiying picked up a fire tongs in the fireplace, shook off the charcoal ash on it, and walked straight towards the middle-aged man. Ding. When the two were only 5 steps apart, the elevator behind Beiying suddenly opened. A team of fully armed soldiers rushed out of the elevator and surrounded Beiying. The equipment of these soldiers was even more luxurious than what Beiying had seen in the dark sky. Each of them wore a black exoskeleton with a scorpion logo, and they were holding energy weapons in their hands, which meant that they could even fight vehicles alone. Standing next to the middle-aged man was a burly woman with obvious characteristics of the Western continent. Her bones and lines were very tough, and she looked very heroic. But what caught Beiying's attention was the scorpion tail tattoo on her neck. It could obviously be covered with exoskeleton armor, but it seemed to be deliberately exposed for people to see. Oh, the little girl is quite capable. The woman glanced at the secretary, who fell to the ground and raised her eyebrows at Beiying. Although I dislike her as much as you do, I didn't really do anything to her. Venomous scorpion, pay attention to the occasion. The middle-aged man interrupted the woman named Venomous Scorpion. Venomous Scorpion could only cooperate and make a zipper motion with his hand next to his mouth, and stopped talking. If it weren't for General Chen, I could have thrown you into the sea to feed the fish. After all, judging from the damage you just caused, I can't afford to sell you. Beiying's eyes swept across the dark muzzle of the gun, and it was rare that he didn't speak to retort the middle-aged man's words. Now you should be willing to listen to my nonsense again. The middle-aged man stood up from the desk he was leaning on, walked leisurely to Beiying's side, and took the fire tongs from the other's hand. More than 10 years ago, you would call me Uncle Gao when you saw me, but you were still young at that time, so it's normal that you don't remember me. Uncle Gao walked to the fireplace slowly with the fire tongs, turned the charcoal in the stove with his back to Beiying. Seeing you always reminds me of the past days. I thought about you, because you are the daughter of an old friend, so I wanted to solve the problem in a friendly manner. But now it seems that I think too much. You and General Chen have nothing in common, and you can even be regarded as a girl who has not grown up. You don't even know how to deal with others. You only know to follow your own temper. At this point, Uncle Gao turned his head and looked at Beiying, who obviously didn't hear what he said. Are you done? Beiying's expression was as if he had heard similar words countless times. If what you mean by dealing with someone is putting drugs in tea and imprisoning other people's mechas, then I really can't learn it. I don't understand how you talk about business. I only know that I should get the goods after paying. You talked so much about this and that, but you can't even do the most basic duties of a businessman. Uncle Gao smiled, and there was a hint of sigh in his eyes when he looked at Beiying. Okay, since you want an answer now, I'll tell you straight to the point. The batch of goods you ordered is gone. Chapter 18, Iron Wall. Don't move. The Scorpion's pulse rifle was already glowing blue. After Uncle Gao finished the last word, Beiying even took a step forward. If you were to talk to me about this at the dinner table 2 days later, maybe you would be in a much better mood than you are now. Uncle Gao poured himself a cup of tea. I didn't put drugs in the tea. Dragon Bud is a tea that needs to be tasted repeatedly. For those who are in contact with Dragon Bud for the first time, drunk on tea is a normal reaction. Where's the goods? Beiying clenched his fists tightly, and his red pupils stared straight at Uncle Gao, who was calm and composed. Rare treasures, the highest bidder wins. Uncle Gao put down the teacup and put away his smile. Except for Crossing Shan, no one survived the first generation of mechas. Almost all the second generation mechas were buried in the endless sea. The third generation of mechas are regarded as the strongest combat power by the alliance countries. The number is scarce and there is no market for them. Liar. Beiying almost gritted his teeth and said these 2 words. When General Chen ordered it, I did intend to sell it to you, but unfortunately this batch of goods has been targeted by another buyer who I can't afford to offend. Uncle Gao's tone did not reveal any guilt, as if he was not the one who made this decision. To be honest, the price is only a secondary factor. Even if you can offer a higher price, I dare not give you the goods. Who is the buyer? In Beiying's view, no one in the world dares to snatch things from the Legion of the Watcher Alliance. No comment. I advise you to give up this idea. Uncle Gao seemed to have expected Beiying to ask such a question. After all, the responsibility for this matter is mine, so I prepared a set of 90% new second generation standardized Raider mechas. I will give it to you at cost price and refund the extra money. How about it? If we only look at the cost point of view, this plan is at least half cheaper than the original one. As for the cost performance, it depends on what Zhu and Se Kang thinks. But in any case, Zhu and Se Kang can only make a decision in this plan proposed by Uncle Gao. There is no other option except acceptance or rejection. But Beiying doesn't think so. Who is the buyer? Beiying came here to give Crossing Shan the best upgrade, not to choose from the defective products given by the other party. After breaking the contract, I wanted to let you stay here comfortably for 2 days, and then let you contact General Chen to consider my plan. Uncle Gao shook his head slightly. Now it seems unnecessary. Let me discuss it with General Chen. After saying this, Uncle Gao walked to the luxurious desk and dialed General Chen's number with the communicator. He wanted Beiying to listen to General Chen's reply in person, so that she would understand that this matter was not something that she, a girl who had not grown up, could decide. Crossing Shan. Beiying shouted, as if calling her own Mecha. PFFT, girl, have you watched too many anime? Poison Scorpion couldn't help but laugh out loud. No hero will come out to save you if you yell at the air, and you yelled at that old Mecha. If I remember correctly, Crossing Shan shouldn't even have an intelligence system installed. Can it understand you yelling at it? Why? Beiying said Morse code and I don't understand it. Right. Yuzao on the other end of the communicator couldn't help but mutter in his heart. Who are you looking down on? A few minutes ago, Yuzao had already learned through the communicator that Beiying had fought with someone over there, and he could hear the conversation between the few people clearly. Thousands of words are summed up in one sentence: his equipment was stolen. How can I tolerate this? Question mark. I, Crossing Shan, walked for 6 hours to get to you, and my feet were almost soaked in the sea. You told me that the goods were gone. You bullied me, crossing Cheyenne, who is always powerless, right? Uzio must get rid of this. In the empty hangar, crossing Cheyenne, who had been dormant, suddenly started up again. His red eye lit up in the darkness, and two sharp wrist blades of the Slayer were unsheathed. Uzio had to find a way out first. The dark red light spread in the air, gradually covering the entire hangar. Uzio was scanning the material properties of the hangar walls and doors. But the result surprised him. Who are you defending against? The entire hangar was made of expensive artificial giant force alloy, an experimental cutting-edge metal developed by the Omega Research Complex. Its unique microstructure and special synthesis process give this metal unparalleled toughness. It can not only resist most physical attacks, but even fusion-level energy strikes can only slowly dissolve the giant force alloy. But like most of Omega's cutting-edge technologies, the cost of this metal is terrifyingly high. It is estimated that the cost of every 20 cubic meters of giant force alloy is equivalent to a brand new second-generation Mecha. However, the giant force alloy used in this hangar is not the original one, but more like a secondary giant force alloy. It sacrifices some toughness, but the cost is also reduced a lot. Despite this, the cost of this hangar can at least build 10 new Xingqians. After a second of intense ideological struggle, Uzio decisively decided to give up the violent door and put away his killerist blade. Only a more elegant way can be used. Scanning network ports. Found 647 hackable targets. Since Uzio replaced the new power reactor, he has gained 2 more combat skills. One is hardening, which can temporarily increase the strength of the body. This is also the means used by the intelligent AI to resist the Red Hurricane Hot Sword when taking over Xingqian. The other is network intrusion, which seems to be only usable against the human camp. Uzio thought that this skill would never be used in the future, but he didn't expect to be slapped in the face so soon. Both combat skills can be upgraded by spending evolution points, but the cost of upgrading is also high enough for Uzio to buy himself an extra core component. Each of the aggregate beasts he killed before only had 200 points of reward. After all, it was a youth version of a Quasi level 3 monster, which was a strong enemy for crossing Cheyenne. But if Red Hurricane came, it would basically be one punch for each. If he could afford the black technology in the mall, he would not have to compete with the people in the silent cemetery for the second-hand equipment. It is really a penny can make a hero difficult. Even after traveling through time, he still has to worry about money. But now a more difficult problem has emerged. The network architecture of the silent cemetery is simply not something that a normal person can think of. The system of the Black Sky is composed of a main control system and countless sub-modules associated with the main control system, so crossing Cheyenne can quickly reverse the infection by invading any sub-module, thereby achieving the goal of controlling the entire system. But the network architecture of the silent cemetery is composed of a main control system plus hundreds of independent random encryption subsystems. Rather than saying that the main control system manages these subsystems, it is better to say that the main control system is just a central post office responsible for collecting and sending information. It does not even have the authority to control these subsystems. This kind of network architecture will directly increase the difficulty of data processing in the system by several orders of magnitude. If you don't spend a lot of money to buy top-notch hardware to support its bandwidth and capacity, this system will not be able to operate normally. But the advantage is that it is safe, very safe. Uzio's dream of invading the entire system was shattered on the spot. Chapter 19. Caged Beast. Even if the entire system of the silent cemetery cannot be paralyzed, Uzio must at least open the hangar first. Network intrusion in progress. Estimated time to crack. 3 minutes and 17 seconds. On the other side of the communicator, Uncle Gao has already dialed General Chen's line. I told you not to move. As soon as Beiyang moved, the poison scorpion shot directly at the place where Beiyang wanted to land. The blue pulse melted the tiles on the spot, revealing a piece of hot steel structure. At the same time, the 2 soldiers behind Beiyang launched a surprise attack from behind. Bang! A foot reinforced with an exoskeleton kicked Beiyang to the ground, breaking her ribs on the spot. Cough. Beiyang felt as if her back was hit by a huge pendulum, and then there was a piercing pain. Get up. Before Beiyang could react, Her arms were grabbed from behind, her calves were stepped on by someone, and the whole person was lifted up while kneeling. The poison scorpion grabbed Beiying's hair and stared at the prey in front of him with his lime-colored snake eyes. You really are not afraid of death. Beiying gritted his teeth and looked at the woman in front of him. His red pupils seemed to shoot through her. It's useless to just not be afraid of death. You also have to learn to judge the situation and be able to bend and stretch. Do you understand? The tone of the poisonous scorpion was like educating a disobedient child. This is not something you should get involved in. Adults' affairs should be left to adults to solve. You just need to do what we say. Beiying sneered. Pa. The poisonous scorpion slapped Beiying in the face, and if the latter hadn't been pulled by someone behind him, he would have fallen to the ground. I hate disobedient children the most. Blood dripped from the corner of Beiying's mouth, and her messy white hair blocked her side face. TSK, 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 what's wrong, my dear, did I hurt you? The poisonous scorpion put on a distressed expression, squatted down and looked at Beiying guiltily. Turn around and let me see if the skin is broken. Beiying slowly turned her face around. There was no tear in the corner of her eyes, and her red pupils were still as firm as before. Bah. As the scorpion's expression gradually twisted, Beiying spat blood directly on the carpet. The next second, the scorpion pulled out the dagger hanging by his leg. It seems that you are not soft-hearted. Boom. Just as the scorpion's blade was about to cross Beiying's cheek, a shocking loud noise suddenly broke out from not far away. The sky-high flames illuminated the high tower engulfed by darkness, followed by piercing alarms and shouts from the crowd. Hello, is that Gao Xian's he? As luck would have it, General Chen just picked up the communication at this time. Boom. Before everyone could react, the second explosion followed closely, and with it came another raging fire. What's going on? Uncle Gao threw the communicator back on the table and walked straight to the scorpion, with no trace of calm on his face. It's the power plant. Facing Uncle Gao's questioning, the scorpion was also confused, but she quickly judged some information from the direction of the explosion. The specific reason is still unclear. I will. Before he finished speaking, the report from his subordinates came through the headset of Poison Scorpion. Crossing Xian. Poison Scorpion looked at Beiying in horror and anger. How could he act on his own? Stop him. Stop. Beiying slowly raised his face and looked at Poison Scorpion and Uncle Gao with sympathy. I'm here. How can I make him stop? On the other side, Yu Zhao in the hangar was already plugged with cables, and the white light from the cables almost illuminated the entire hangar like daylight. He had heard the situation on Beiying's side from the communicator, but it would take another 2 minutes to crack the hangar door. Fortunately, the network security coefficient of these charging cables was not high, and he only took 10 seconds to crack them all. After inserting all these cables into his own interfaces, Yu Zhao immediately called on the massive amount of electricity he absorbed in the Black Sky base, and transmitted it back to the power plant in the Silent Cemetery. At this time, Yu Zhao was grateful for the complex network architecture of the Silent Cemetery. Every cable connected to him comes from a different subsystem, which means that he can use this method to destroy all power plants in different locations at once. The surging electrical energy flows back along the cables, and almost all the capacitor units are overloaded on the spot the moment they touch the power generation group. Yu Zhao felt like a conductor standing in a symphony hall. With just a wave of his hand, he could make the corresponding instrument group player or full of artistic atmosphere. He was also quite patient, and did not rush for success. He planned to rhythmically detonate these power generation groups one by one, so that the Silent Cemetery would always be shrouded in anxiety and panic. The approach of the hostile Mecha has been detected, and the system is being analyzed. Just as Yu Zhao was about to detonate the next power generation group, he suddenly received an alarm from the intelligent AI. Mecha code, Cobra, model, specialized third generation decisive battle mecha, drivers, Blackheart, Ryanheart, mecha performance, third generation variable frequency nuclear power armor, height 80 meters, weight 12,740 tons, equipment module. Spark 2.0 holographic bionic interactive system, Fang chemical wrist blade, anti-energy light armor, black blood corrosive energy rifle, combat rating, sea level, 4,900 points, how can I fight you? Yuzaro felt overwhelmed just by looking at this long list of equipment module introductions, not to mention that the opponent's combat power is 3 times his. Calculating the strength of both sides, based on the existing information, looking for feasible tactical suggestions. The sudden surprise rekindled Yuzaro's hope. He didn't expect that the newly installed intelligent AI could actually provide tactical guidance. As long as there is a feasible plan, Yuzaro believes that he has a chance to defeat the strong with the weak. Tactical suggestion, retreat path. Yuzaro almost sprayed a mouthful of coolant on the metal wall. What kind of tactical advice is this? If even such a high-tech intelligent AI suggested that he run, then this battle should be one-sided without any suspense, and there is almost no possibility of a comeback. Facing a powerful monster, Crossing Cheyenne may still rely on a trick to win, but facing a mecha that is also controlled by a person, Crossing Cheyenne has no chance to take advantage by taking shortcuts. But the current situation is that he has to wait for a minute of cracking time before he can even retreat. Just as Yuzaro was eagerly thinking about how to deal with the powerful enemy, he heard heavy footsteps from outside the hangar. Ding. As the sound of authentication was sounded, the door that originally blocked Crossing Cheyenne from the outside world was suddenly opened. A figure that was nearly 1/3 taller than Crossing Cheyenne appeared in front of Yuzaro, like a towering mountain, completely blocking Yuzaro's only way out. A first-generation mecha that can act autonomously. It's really interesting. Cobra raised his gun at Crossing Cheyenne. Chapter 20 Upgrade Materials. From the first time Yuzaro saw Cobra, he knew that he had no chance of winning in a head-on confrontation. His intelligent AI had already made an estimate. With the equipment module on Crossing Cheyenne, there was no possibility of even penetrating the opponent's armor. Even if Yuzaro used a harden skill to strengthen Crossing Cheyenne's wrist blade to fight against him, he would definitely be defeated before he touched the opponent. The strengthening effect of the harden skill is inversely proportional to the coverage area. The larger the coverage area of the body, the worse the effect and the shorter the duration. This means that once Yuzaro used harden to strengthen his wrist blade, he would no longer be able to use this trick to take into account the body's defense. Attack and defense, you can't have both. Then Yuzaro's only way is to delay. Cobra stood at the door, holding the giant corrosive energy rifle named Black Blood in his hand. The bright light outside stretched the giant's shadow very long enough to completely cover Crossing Cheyenne in his shadow. The Hart brothers originally planned to shoot directly at Crossing Cheyenne and kill him cleanly, but Crossing Cheyenne's actions forced the two to give up this idea. Damn it. He is connected to the charging lines of other power plants. Crossing Cheyenne deliberately showed the cables on his waist to Cobra in order to prevent the other party from acting rashly. In fact, as long as Yuzaro overloads 2/3 of the power generation units, the silent cemetery will immediately fall into a state of no electricity available. As long as he wants, he can do this at any time. But the next second, a real-time picture was projected on Cobra's chest. I thought it was this girl who was remotely controlling you, but now it seems that this is not the case at all. In front of the camera, the scorpion covered Beiying's mouth with one hand and held a dagger against Beiying's neck with the other hand. Although I don't know what's wrong with you, an artificial intelligence, but I think you did all this for this girl, right? As soon as the voice fell, the scorpion stabbed the dagger under Beiying's skin, and the bright red blood immediately flowed out along the tip of the knife. I'll give you 30 seconds. Put your hands where I can see them, and then unplug all the cables on your body one by one. The countdown starts now. As the scorpion began to count down, the dagger in her hand slowly slashed across the white shadow's neck. Yuzaro knew that he had no choice at the moment. He could only do as the scorpion said, put his hands where the cobra could see him, and unplug the chips on his body one by one. However, Yuzaro knew that once he lost all his chips, the cobra standing at the door would pull the trigger on him without mercy. One by one, the fluorescent cables fell off Crossing Cheyenne's body. Even through the screen, Yuzaro could feel the smile of the scorpion on the other side of the camera. Yuzaro focused almost all his attention on the countdown panel of the system until the number on it changed from tens to ones. 3. Yuzaro slowly reached his hand to the back of Crossing Cheyenne's spine. It was the highest power of all the charging lines, and the only one of all the power generation groups that was directly related to the power supply of the core area of the silent cemetery. He deliberately left this line to the end, so that the other party would not choose to sacrifice part of the power generation unit in exchange for Crossing Shine's life. 2. Crossing Shine's alloy giant palm has already grasped the last cable. Now Yuzao only needs to twist it lightly, and his connection with this power generation unit will be immediately cut off. 1. Do it. Scorpion gave the order to Cobra directly in front of Crossing Shine, because she had clearly seen Crossing Shine turn his wrist and pull out the last cable. Click. But at this moment, there was a loud noise from Cobra, and then the whole screen was forcibly closed in a violent shaking. The smile on Scorpion's face rose. What happened? On the other end of the communicator, he could hear the Hart brothers' heart-pounding screams at this time. Door. After the elder brother Ryan squeezed out these two words with difficulty, the voice communication was also interrupted. In the number 4 hangar, Crossing Shine was holding the cable that had just been unplugged in his hand and strode towards Cobra. What Yuzao counted just now was not the countdown that the poisonous Scorpion left for him, but the crack countdown that he had been waiting for. Now, the control of the number 4 hangar has been transferred to Yuzao, and he chose to forcefully close the door of the hangar at the first time. Since the other party opened the door, he has been standing between the doors and pointing a gun at him. If the strength of Crossing Shine and Cobra is not at the same level, then the anti-energy light armor on Cobra is not at the same level as the giant alloy. The original configuration of the 3rd generation decisive battle standard Mecha is molecular memory alloy armor, which has a very good performance in resisting physical attacks. But the specialized transformation on Cobra is obviously not used to fight monsters, but is specifically used to fight other mechas. In order to achieve more flexible mobility than other mechas, Cobra abandoned the more balanced original armor and instead installed anti-energy light armor that can effectively resist the firepower of various mechas. Yuzao determined this point and decided to use the giant metal door of the hangar to directly launch a physical attack on Cobra. If Cobra is a standardized 3rd generation decisive battle mecha, Yuzao is worried that the secondary giant force metal will not be able to clamp the opponent. Bang! Another support column popped out from the body of Cobra. At this moment, he was like a walnut caught in a pair of pliers, and he could break at any time. What do you want to do? The huge pressure hit the two sides of Cobra's body like a tsunami, and the Hart brothers felt that their internal organs were about to burst out of their bodies. I have to say that you have done a good job in preventing black invasion. Yuzao tried to invade the network when he noticed Cobra and found that it would take more than 400 hours to completely crack this mecha. The Hart brothers could not hear this sentence because Crossing Shine did not have a voice broadcast installed on him. But Yuzao was still very happy. He saw Crossing Shine shaking the charging line in his hand at Cobra, and the next second he directly inserted it into the interface under the waist armor of Cobra. Can you let me go through the back door? Although Cobra's anti-hacking is very good, as long as Yuzao can bypass the firewall to access the port, he can immediately invade the other party's network. Most of the programs in the Silent Cemetery are on the whitelist of the Cobra firewall, so Yuzao only needs to implant his cracking program into the charging line, and he can easily disguise himself as a whitelist user and directly bypass the firewall to invade the other party. Warning: neural synchronization has been forcibly disconnected. As the system prompt ended, the Hart brothers completely lost control of the Cobra mecha. Chapter 21 Heroes Appear. The moment the Hart brothers lost control, Yuzao immediately released the gate from squeezing the Cobra. This is a precious 3rd generation mecha. It really crushed Xingqian. Where did the upgrades come from? I suggest you come out by yourselves. The two brothers who had just climbed up from the driver's seat immediately saw the holographic message floating in the cabin. You son of a bitch, don't even think about it. The elder brother Ryan threw his helmet directly at the message box. When have the two brothers ever suffered such a dumb loss? It has always been their share to rob other people's mechas. Then don't blame me for being rude. Yuzao didn't intend to persuade them at all and was ready to use force. He directly controlled the Cobra to stretch out his giant hand, tore off the armor on the head that was used to cover the cockpit, and directly raised his fingers to bounce towards the two brothers. As for whether the two brothers would be directly shot to death, it was none of Yuzao's business. After all, they and the poison scorpion were both ruthless characters who killed people without blinking an eye. After the two screams disappeared in Xingshan's microphone, the two mechas headed directly into the high wall. Stop them. In the battle command post, an officer in gorgeous military uniform shouted loudly into the communicator. Hit both of them. Many people did not dare to attack the Cobra driven by the Hart brothers, for fear that they would be retaliated by the brothers if they accidentally injured this precious Mecha. Hit both. Cobra is no longer our Mecha. This was the information that his immediate superior, Scorpion, had just told him. For a moment, all the automatic artillery on the high wall almost instantly locked onto the two high-speed mechas. Fire! With an order, dozens of dazzling energy pulses shot out from the high wall, attacking the two mechas controlled by Yuzao like a meteor shower. Yuzao immediately controlled Crossing Shine to hide behind the Cobra, and directly asked the latter to remove the black blood corrosive energy rifle hanging on his back. Boom, boom, boom. Countless beams hit the anti-energy armor of the Cobra, like a stone falling into the water, stirring up circles of shockwaves. But no pulse caused substantial damage to the Cobra. The armor of the Cobra is used to defend against man-made weapons. It's my turn. Yuzao couldn't wait to control the Cobra. The performance of the third generation Mecha seemed to Yuzao to be a cheat, and he couldn't wait. A ball of black energy body sprayed out from the muzzle of the Cobra, like a black sun, and hit the 70-meter high wall directly. The seemingly indestructible high wall was instantly dissolved into a big hole. Black smoke was steaming among the broken bricks and tiles, and more than a dozen automatic cannons that had not yet been fully charged were destroyed on the spot. This is the combat power that a Mecha should have. Yuzao didn't expect that the energy corrosion of the black blood rifle could be so exaggerated that even the high wall mixed with inferior giant metal could be melted instantly. Bang bang bang. Yuzao controlled the Cobra to shoot continuously without hesitation, and 3 black energy bodies hit the 3 most densely populated firepower points of the high wall respectively. In less than a minute, the defensive firepower of the high wall had been basically declared completely destroyed. Retreat. Everyone, retreat to the underground shelter. The commander hurriedly issued his last order, and then he was the first to run out of the command post and squeezed into the nearest shelter with the crowd without regard for his dignity. No more than 4 shots at a time. Cobra removed the huge chemical tank under the barrel, and hot white smoke floated out from the muzzle. The ammunition used in the black blood corrosive energy rifle is specially made. Its basic principle is to put the chemical substances required for the energy body into the storage tank and create a suitable reaction environment through the precise structure inside the rifle. With the high pressure and high temperature in the barrel, an energy body that can instantly melt the target is fired. But the shortcomings of this gun are also very obvious. First, after replacing the storage tank, the rifle needs up to half a minute of reaction preparation time before it can continue to fire. Second, Cobra's waste ammunition depot can only hold a maximum of 4 storage tanks at a time, which is almost the same as having no ammunition capacity compared to other mechas. But for the resistance that Yuzao is facing now, 4 shots are enough. The 2 mechas passed through the big hole in the high wall one after another and walked straight towards the tower where Beiying was. Stop. When Crossing Shine's huge red eye shone into the reception room on the top floor of the tower, Uncle Gao felt for the first time that he had miscalculated. Zilla. Crossing Shine lifted the roof of the tower and threw the helicopter landing pad in his hand aside like throwing away garbage. I told you to stop. At this moment, all the exoskeleton warriors had stood in front of Uncle Gao, aiming their energy rifles at Crossing Shine's eye. Only Uncle Gao was left holding a gun against Beiying's head. Yuzao really wanted to laugh. He didn't know why the group of people in front of him thought that the energy rifles in their hands could pose a threat to a mecha of dozens of meters. This scene seemed as stupid as a primitive man holding a bow to threaten a tank. Even if you can use this gun to penetrate my armor, it's just a tiny hole for me. Uncle Gao's only bargaining chip now is Beiying. Crossing Shine stopped, not for anything else, just to see what Uncle Gao could ask for after the silent cemetery was destroyed like this. It seems that you can understand what people say. Although Yuzao was not moving, Uncle Gao's body was still shaking. He was both scared and angry. The damage you have caused me is incalculable. If you still want her to be alive, then fire at your own power reactor now. Uncle Geo felt that he had never roared so loudly in his life. But the louder he roared, the more his body shook. Ha 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 ha. Beiyang laughed, laughing so wildly, as if it was not her who was pointed at with a gun. What are you laughing at? Beiyang's laughter was like a knife, stabbing into Uncle Geo's pounding heart. I ask you what you are laughing at. Coward. Beiyang uttered these 3 words word by word. Crossing Shine's shoulder armor suddenly began to deform, and 2 rows of small caliber artillery appeared in front of everyone. Boom, boom, boom. Bullets rained down on the guards in front of Uncle Geo, beating the exoskeleton soldiers who had not yet reacted into meat paste on the spot. Only a few people chose to use the powerful mobility of the exoskeleton to escape directly from the outer wall of the tower when they saw the artillery rising. In just a few seconds, the gorgeous reception room was turned into a mess by the rain of bullets. Don't come near me. The frightened Uncle Geo had already thrown away his gun and lay on the ground. At this moment, he was staring at the white shadow walking towards him with the eyes of a madman. We haven't settled the accounts between us yet. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 22, Advantage in Numbers. The last image reflected in Uncle Geo's pupils was Beiyang's kick towards his head. Then, Beiyang dragged Uncle Geo's calf like dragging a dead prey, and brought him to Crossing Shine's cockpit. Crack. There was no rope in the cabin to tie Uncle Geo, so Beiyang could only use the simplest method to restrict his movements after waking up, breaking his bones. The crisp bone sounds made Yuzao shudder. Compared with directly using bullets to smash the opponent into meat paste, this torture method was even more terrifying in his opinion. How are you going to deal with him? Find a desolate mountain to interrogate him. If he doesn't cooperate, cut off his arms and legs and bury him on the spot. Beiyang said this in a natural tone that made Yuzao think she was just going home to kill a fish. You're not going to ask me why I didn't bring him back to the base. No. Yuzao knew the reason very well. Then let's go now. Beiyang wiped the blood off her face, stood in the operating position again, and started neural synchronization with Crossing Shine. Neural synchronization is successful. The current synchronization rate is 97%. Yuzao finally breathed a sigh of relief. Letting him control 2 mechas at the same time was almost brain overload. This was not to say that he could not operate it, but simply because his computing memory was not enough. As long as his machine soul level was improved, this problem would be solved. But the method of improving the machine soul level was a bit abstract. According to the system, it was to make creatures admire or fear the machine. In a nutshell, either let Crossing Shine be respected by everyone, or let Crossing Shine become the spokesperson of fear. Then why did Crossing Shine, who had become a legend, still have a machine soul level of 1? However, before Yuzao could continue to think about it, he heard the alarm from the system again. Behind. 4 missiles with tail flames spiraled straight towards Crossing Shine, who had not turned around yet. At the critical moment, Yuzao directly decided to temporarily transfer the main control object to Cobra, and let Beiyang control Crossing Shine alone. Bang! A burst of thick smoke rolled up from Cobra's arm. He blocked the attack for Crossing Shine. Intelligent AI won't help other mechas block attacks. The voice of the poisonous scorpion suddenly appeared in the public communication channel. Outside the high wall, a huge mecha with a purple paint on its body put away the missile launcher on its shoulder and slowly walked towards Crossing Shine and Cobra. Mecha code, Scorpion, body model, specialized 3rd generation decisive battle mecha, driver, poisonous scorpion, body performance, 3rd generation variable frequency nuclear power armor, height 80 meters, weight 13,600 tons equipment. Module, Scorpion King Bionic Interaction System, Needle Corrosion Missile, Giant Claw Thermal Acceleration Cannon, Enhanced Molecular Memory Armor, Scorpion Tail Combined Giant Metal Chain Sword, Combat Rating, Seal Level, 5,200 points. The disappeared poisonous scorpion drove the most powerful mecha in the silent cemetery back to the battlefield. Compared with the cobra, the armor thickness of the magic scorpion reached a terrifying 2000 millimeters, just like an upright giant scorpion covered with armor. Yuzao looked at the armor on Cobra's arm that was dissolving, and his heart was bleeding. I didn't expect that a mecha recycling station could have two third-generation mechas at the same time. It's really luxurious. Beiying looked at the giant in the distance coldly. Although Gao Xianxi is indeed kind to our Venom core, these two mechas don't belong to him. Scorpion crossed the high wall from the gap and continued to move forward. People should always be grateful. He still owes us half a year's salary. Scorpion finally stopped. At this moment, both sides entered each other's attack range. You should know your own weight, right? There was even a hint of smile in the tone of the Venom Scorpion. Leave Cobra and Gao Xianxi here, and I will let you go back to the Black Sky. As for the follow-up matters, let your General Chen and Gao Xianxi discuss it by themselves. Did I say that I want to go back to the Black Sky? Swoosh. The wrist blade of the Slayer popped out directly from under Yuzao's arm. It's really annoying. That's why I hate disobedient children. The Scorpion also took a fighting stance. I'll let you go so as not to hurt Cobra. Now it seems that I can only let you, the Black Sky, pay for the repair. Then let's see if you can live until then. Bang. This time, Yuzao was one step ahead of Beiying. He fired the first shot with the black blood energy corrosion rifle in Cobra's hand. Countless chemical substances continued to merge in the barrel of the gun, and finally turned into a black energy body under the high temperature heating, flying out of the muzzle of Cobra. Almost at the same moment, when Cobra pulled the trigger, the Scorpion completed the target lock on the two mechas, and fired 4 corrosion missiles at each of them. Yuzao knew the power of these missiles. This was a corrosion that even Cobra's anti-energy armor could not resist. If Crossing Shine was hit, the consequences would be disastrous. Boom. Cobra directly charged at the Scorpion under the attack of the missiles. Although this would further corrode his armor, as long as he could enter the range of close combat, these losses were acceptable. Crossing Shine directly took a defensive posture to protect the cockpit, and was hit accurately by 4 corrosive missiles. Why don't you save that little girl now? Scorpio was already running. She had just tried to dodge the energy attack of the Cobra by turning sideways, but the energy body that passed by still dissolved a big hole in the shoulder of Scorpio. Warning. 36% of the whole body armor is damaged. Yuzao didn't answer the other party's question at all. At this moment, the power of the Cobra's power reactor had reached its peak. He quickly emptied all the remaining ammunition in the rifle, and then hung the rifle back behind him. 2 black wrist blades popped out from under the armor of the Cobra. As the two sides closed the distance, no one stopped pouring firepower on each other. Bang. Just as the chemical wrist blade of the Cobra stabbed at the head of the Scorpio, a silver metal chainsword suddenly wrapped around the blade of the Cobra and stuck it in midair. The next second, the giant palm of the Scorpio directly buckled under the shoulder armor of the Cobra, tightly pinching the movable joint of the Cobra. Goodbye. As the poisonous Scorpion said goodbye, the other hand of the demon Scorpion began to deform, and the heavy armor folded layer by layer, revealing the giant claw thermal acceleration cannon hidden in the wrist, which was pressed against the power reactor of the Cobra. Bang! Two loud noises exploded in the demon Scorpion's hand, and the Cobra took the opportunity to use the wrist blade that had been freed from the restraints to slash the demon Scorpion's chest. The black giant blade instantly cut through the demon Scorpion's heavy armor, and along a perfect arc, it came out from the armor on the other side of the demon Scorpion, bringing out a string of electric sparks. I can actually survive from the corrosive missile. The demon Scorpion subconsciously distanced himself from the Cobra, staring at Crossing Shine, who walked out of the thick smoke with 3 pairs of black eyes. In fact, when Yuzao let Beiying temporarily control Crossing Shine alone, he also opened up the use of the hardening skill to Beiying. In Yuzao's view, trusting Crossing Shine is one of Beiying's few advantages, which also saves him the time to think about how to make a reasonable explanation. During the missile attack just now, Beiying used hardening to strengthen the armor of Crossing Shine that was in direct contact with the missile, thereby minimizing the damage to the armor. You seem to have forgotten that we are fighting 2 against 1. Chapter 23 A Fatal Blow. Xingshan's artillery could not cause any substantial damage to the Scorpion. The enhanced molecular memory armor on the Scorpion could repair itself in almost 1 second. But the explosion and impact of the artillery itself would affect the Scorpion's movements. To the Scorpion, Xingshan was like a child who would throw stones at him. It didn't hurt him, but it was annoying. Bang, bang, bang. Xingshan ran towards the Scorpion while firing wildly. One artillery after another exploded on the Scorpion's armor, and the poisoned Scorpion in the cockpit was shaken back by the impact of the artillery. Although the old-fashioned artillery was not powerful enough, it had a large ammunition capacity and sufficient ammunition. It was not until Xingshan's barrel was overheated and about to be damaged that the Scorpion finally seized the opportunity and deployed the missile launcher under the shoulder armor. But at this moment, the Cobra launched another attack. This time he no longer kept his distance, but put away his wrist blade and directly contacted the Scorpion at 0 distance. The poisoned Scorpion did not expect the Cobra to launch such a crazy attack. When the Cobra pounced directly on the body of the Scorpion, 8 corrosive missiles were fired at this time. Boom. Purple flames exploded in the narrow gap between the two mechas, and chemicals that were enough to dissolve the alloy splashed on the armor of the two like a rainstorm. Up in the cockpit, the poisoned Scorpion scratched his body desperately. Even though the neural synchronization protection had been turned on at the first time, the poisoned Scorpion also felt the pain of skin ulceration and the residual pain. Warning, 71% of the whole body armor was damaged. Although Yuzio didn't feel any pain, his heart was broken. This is my upgrade material. Don't think about walking out alive today. The anger in the poisoned Scorpion's heart has reached a point where it is difficult to suppress. She hasn't lost her composure like this for a long time. The next second, the Scorpion took the initiative to rush towards the Cobra and swung his iron fist. When the Scorpion's fist was still in the air, Yuzio had already analyzed the terrifying power contained in this punch, so he directly chose to catch it with both hands. Gudang. The collision between the two giants instantly set off a strong shock, blowing away all the debris on the surrounding buildings. Warning, wrist armor damaged by 27%. If Yuzio hadn't used both hands to catch it, Cobra would have broken an arm with this punch. Go to hell. Anger completely occupied the Scorpion's brain, and she no longer cared whether the Cobra could be recovered completely. As another iron fist hit the Cobra's shoulder, Yuzio half knelt on the ground. Warning, shoulder armor has been damaged. At the same time, a giant silver metal chainsword suddenly sprang out from the back of the Scorpion and chopped straight at the Cobra's head. At the critical moment, the Cobra's chemical wrist blade suddenly popped out, and the tip of the chainsword was stuck only a few meters away from the head. Black corrosive liquid continued to drip from the blade of the chemical wrist blade, dissolving the anti-energy armor on the Cobra's leg. Your venom can't corrode pure giant force metal. Click. Warning, the Fang chemical wrist blade is damaged by 37%. Yuzio clearly heard the sound of metal breaking. He could see spider web-like cracks appearing on the wrist blade, and black metal fragments were constantly falling from it. Let him go. Just when the Scorpion's scorpion tail chainsword was only a few meters away from the Cobra's head, Crossing Shine also swung the Black Slayer's giant blade and rushed straight to the Scorpion's head. Too naive. In a flash, Yuzio saw with his own eyes that the chainsword held above his head broke from the middle, revealing rows of sharp teeth like shark teeth. The Scorpion tail chainsword split into two at this moment. The split chainsword directly blocked Crossing Shine's waving wrist blade. Ding. A crisp shattering sound echoed among the ruins. The poisoned Scorpion looked at the broken Scorpion tail flying in the air in disbelief, and the silver fragments scattered and fell like a brilliant galaxy. The next second, the black giant blade pierced the cockpit of the Scorpion's head and blocked the tiny body of the poisoned Scorpion. This time, it was Yuzio who initiated the hardening. I surrender. The remaining half of the Scorpion tail retracted back behind the demon Scorpion, and the fist pressing on the Cobra slowly raised to the air. If it was any other opponent, the poisonous Scorpion might still think about how to sneak attack the opponent at this time. Unfortunately, the opponent was Beiying, a crazy girl who didn't care about her life. The poisonous Scorpion had sufficient reason to believe that, even if she controlled the other half of the Scorpion tail, to penetrate Xingqian's cockpit at this time, Beiying would not be able to withdraw her hand to defend. She would only seize every opportunity to swing the giant blade to cut the poisonous scorpion in half before she died. However, as long as the poisonous scorpion was in the cockpit, she still had hope of finding other turning points. Because the demon scorpion was a specially modified biological authentication mecha, no iron pilot could drive it except her. Even if she disconnected the neural synchronization, Beiying had no means to transport the demon scorpion back to the black sky in a short time. By the time the black sky reacted, her reinforcement had already arrived. Turn off your network security firewall and open all connection ports. This sentence was what Yu Zhao asked Beiying to say. The opportunity has come. Okay. Poison Scorpion readily agreed. The biometric authentication of the scorpion's body is engraved on the bottom layer of the system, and this customized system is also the only system that the scorpion can load, which means that this mecha will always be bound to Poison Scorpion himself. No matter how advanced the technical means of Beiying and crossing China are, it is impossible to take away Poison Scorpion's bottom level control over the scorpion mecha. This technology is unique, and it is related to a secret of Poison Scorpion himself. As far as she knows, no mecha other than the scorpion uses the same technology. Now, she only needs to wait patiently for the other party to fall into this trap, and she can complete a GD counterattack at the last moment. A puppet that can break free from the silk thread at a critical moment is the most deadly. Network intrusion. Found suspicious abnormal fluctuations. Yu Zhao frowned. At this moment, he was traveling through the scorpion's system in the form of a data torrent, and everywhere he saw was the code suspended in the blue space. Is there any abnormality that can stump the black technology? Floating in the air, Yu Zhao decided to fly in the direction indicated by the system. As Yu Zhao went deeper and deeper into the bottom layer of the scorpion's system, he found that the codes floating around him began to become more and more strange. The code of a program that can run normally should be concise, efficient, and recognized by the system. In other words, when humans write code, they are creating a language that can be understood by the system and machines, because these characters are not for humans to recognize. But the code next to Yu Zhao is becoming more and more bloated, and each paragraph is filled with a large number of meaningless characters, as absurd as someone writing a diary in the comments next to the code. These contents are useless except for adding burden to the processor. It was not until Yu Zhao continued to fly to the bottom layer for a distance that he accidentally discovered the content that shocked him, the machine soul. In a long instruction without even a segment, there is a section of characters marked in red. Sister, I want to go home. Chapter 24, Machine Soul Synchronization. Yu Zhao felt his heartbeat slow down. The scorpion's system has become a spirit. He could feel the strong attraction from the bottom of the data space, which was a vortex that Yu Zhao, as a machine soul, could not resist. After hesitating for a moment, Yu Zhao decided to continue diving. The surrounding environment began to change gradually, and the originally orderly blue gradually turned into dark red. Lines of long codes floated in the cramped space like floating corpses. Where is this place? Body, no consciousness. I'm not a machine. I'm not. Sister is in danger. I must fight. Sister, why are you just watching? In these instructions classified as garbage by the system, Yu Zhao saw a struggle of a human mind. Similar information like this has almost filled the entire deep space. After a period of diving, Yu Zhao finally reached the bottom, where he saw the source of all the absurdity. It was a delicate body, with burnt and peeling skin flying around her like ashes, while the girl herself was like a sculpture, motionless. Yu Zhao brushed away the redundant information around him, and slowly approached the girl. When they were only one step away from each other, he noticed that there was still a faint light in the girl's body. The white light was like a flame that was about to go out in the wind, and it seemed that it would go out in the next second. Damaged machine soul detected. Do you want to absorb it? When this system prompt popped up, Yu Zhao's outstretched hand suddenly stopped in midair. Wait, damaged machine soul? Am I seeing it right? Could this girl also be a time traveler? Question mark? This sudden system prompt directly set off a hurricane in Yu Zhao's brain. Looking at the faint fire in front of him, Yu Zhao's heart surged with an inexplicable grief. It was this grief that made him finally make a choice. Absorbing machine soul. The white flame was like ethereal starlight, directly penetrating the girl's stone sculpture-like body and slowly floating into Yuzaro's heart. Instantly, a warm current swept through all of Yuzaro's senses. He felt that he, who had turned into a torrent of data, seemed to have become a little stronger. Achieved a new machine soul ability, machine soul synchronization. Machine soul synchronization. Break the wall of reality within a certain period of time. Attach the power of the machine soul to the mecha, and make the body performance temporarily break through the theoretical limit. As expected by Yuzaro, he did have an extra strange skill. Detected that the abnormal fluctuation has been eliminated, the invasion is complete, and the machine soul is being ejected. Before Yuzaro could continue thinking, he saw the girl's original body turned into countless scattered ashes and disappeared in the air, and the dark red bottom space around it also returned to blue. The next second, Yuzaro's main consciousness returned to the body of the cobra. Warning, neural synchronization has been forcibly disconnected. Poison Scorpion shouted on the spot. This is impossible. Seeing the holographic synchronization panel extinguished in front of him, Poison Scorpion subconsciously froze in place. It is impossible for her neural synchronization to be forcibly disconnected by the system. The Scorpion was a mecha that only she could drive. Even if the other party had completed the invasion and issued an order to disconnect the synchronization, this last step of the order confirmation could only be done with her consent. But now, this mecha was no longer under her control. Perhaps it would never be in the future. What on earth did you do to the Scorpion? The Poison Scorpion could no longer think about how to fight back. The only thought in her mind was to ask the other party to explain clearly. Facing two mechas, as long as the Poison Scorpion lost control of the Scorpion, it would be equivalent to losing any possibility of resistance. You opened all the connection ports yourself. What did you say we did? Beiying looked at the unbelievable expression on the other party's face and found it more and more funny. Could it be that you have hidden some secrets and are planning to fight back? I'll give you 30 seconds. Go and get on the escape pod to get out of the Scorpion now, otherwise you will be thrown out. The countdown starts now. Hearing Beiying imitating her previous tone to threaten herself, the Poison Scorpion subconsciously clenched her fist tightly. But as the Poison Scorpion herself said, people should judge the situation and be able to bend and stretch. After hesitating for only a second, the Scorpion quickly got into the escape pod and started the escape procedure. Staying alive is more important than anything else. Escape pod has been ejected. Number of remaining escape pods. 0. A mecha designed to be driven by two people, but only has one control position and one escape pod. Is it because of the machine soul? Yuzaro looked at the escape pod flying to the distant plane, and doubts arose in his heart. He could feel that the broken machine soul he had just absorbed had completely merged with himself, but he still didn't understand why this machine soul was in such a state. What did she do to the machine soul? Is there any accident? As if sensing Yuzaro's worries, Beiying asked directly to the empty cockpit. It's not a very important matter. It won't be too late to analyze it when we return to the base. Yuzaro didn't want to stay in the silent cemetery any longer. Let's set off now and find a remote place for you to interrogate Gaoshi and see. No need. Beiying's answer was beyond Yuzaro's expectations. Now that we have controlled two third-generation mechas, let's hurry back to the base to upgrade you, so as to avoid another obstacle. Are you serious? Yuzaro didn't quite believe that Beiying could say this. According to her personality, she would not be satisfied until Gaoshi and he was skinned alive. Although I look down on the Cobra, the Scorpion is a top-notch mecha. I don't want to waste time because of Gaoshi and he. Beiying's tone was like persuading himself. We have already got your upgrades, and I have also avenged the venomous Scorpion. That's enough. If Yuzaro could look in the mirror at this moment, he would definitely find that he was smiling like an old father on his face. Why don't you say anything? Click. Seeing Beiying's red pupils suddenly become smaller, Yuzaro almost had a cardiac arrest. You're right, let's go back to the black sky now, so as not to encounter any more accidents. Although Yuzaro was startled by Beiying's expression, it did not prevent him from calming down in a second. Who? Beiyang exhaled in a voice that only he could hear clearly. Let's get going now. Let's go. 3 tall mechas lined up in a row and walked neatly towards the coast outside the high wall. When the sound of the tide rang in Yuzao's ears again, he looked back at a messy and silent cemetery. This place is neither the silence imagined, nor is it a cemetery for the mechas to rest in peace. The humid sea breeze blew across the 3 battle-scarred mechas, and Yuzao suddenly turned his gaze back to the endless sea. The wind direction has changed. Chapter 25 Nightmare in the Sea. This time, Beiyang did not scold Yuzao for joking. Even she could feel the turbulent wind that was rushing across the sea. Multiple unidentified hostile mechas detected. System analysis in progress. When the red system warning appeared in the cockpits of the 3 mechas at the same time, Yuzao was ready for battle. He could clearly feel that the shallows under his feet were shaking. Swish. On the dark sea surface, several shark fins, as long as 10 meters suddenly appeared. They cut through the dark water like sharp blades and swam towards the silent cemetery at high speed. At the same time, dozens of huge red dots suddenly appeared on Crossing Shine's radar. Is it a demon shark? Beiyang immediately manipulated Crossing Shine to take a fighting stance, his eyes fixed on the front few fins. Although she had not received training at the Iron Pilot Academy, Beiyang could recite all the information about mechas and monsters by heart. She had been an avid mecha enthusiast since she was a child, and the demon shark was one of the first monsters she remembered. As early as the era when the first generation of mechas fought bloody battles, the demon shark was one of the #1 enemies of mankind. Their size was mostly between 50 and 60 meters, and their weight fluctuated between 7,000 and 8,500 tons. The reason why the demon shark became the most difficult enemy for mechas was because of their unparalleled mobility in the sea and their characteristic of preferring to move in groups. Unlike most of the amphibious monsters that can stand on 2 feet now, the demon shark is a typical sea monster, but its streamlined body and slender tail give it a terrifying movement speed in the sea. If the mobility of mechas in the far sea is compared to a cargo ship, then the demon shark is a speedboat equipped with a rocket jet. Although the demon shark has never landed to attack a city, 10 years ago, they once made the entire planet's route without ships. With the continuous progress of mankind in war technology, the demon shark has finally faded out of people's sight. 10 years later, people have every reason to believe that the more threatening new generation of monsters have completely replaced the demon shark. But now, they appear again like ghosts. 5,000 meters. 4,000 meters. Unknown error in system analysis. Reason: enemy unit has multiple identification information. No, they can't go ashore to launch an attack. That's simply suicide. Beiyang immediately denied his idea. They are not monsters. At this moment, Yuzao finally made his judgment. When a demon shark swam under the giant searchlight of the scorpion, Yuzao clearly saw a blue metallic luster. 2,000 meters. Boom. A blue mecha jumped out of the water, setting off a huge wave as high as tens of meters. Roar. The distorted roar mixed with electronic noise seemed to be the craziest cry from the depths of the dark universe. What the hell is that? Beiyang could feel her beating heart, as if it was about to break through her chest in the next second. Her body was shaking, because her intuition told her that this was definitely not a species that could be produced on this planet. It was a damaged head. The place where the cockpit should have been was filled with brown flesh walls. Looking closely, there were 7 asymmetrical eyeballs on the flesh walls. Looking down, there is a body covered with green pus. Between the gaps of each piece of armor, you can see muscles that seem to be breathing. They are like vines wrapped around the supporting pillars that are about to rust, propping up the skeleton of the body that should have collapsed. What's even more twisted is that the surface of the armor of this mecha is covered with a layer of fine scales. It should have been a fearless warrior walking upright, but all its movable joints have been filled with wriggling cartilage, turning it into a monster that can reverse its joints and crawl on the ground with its limbs. And behind this mecha is a 10-meter long fin and a giant thick tail that is 30 meters long. Almost every inch of this deformed monster is full of incoordination. Open the error report details and list all relevant identification information. Yuzao gave the system an order without hesitation. Mecha code: Blue Eagle, destroyed. Model: standard 2nd generation Defender Mecha. Drivers: Machi Elton, deceased. Philip Joyce, deceased. Mecha performance, 2nd generation nuclear powered armor, height 70 meters. Weight 11,000 tons. Equipment module, Spark 1.0 intelligent AI system, rocket powered jet punch, shock resistant plastic muscle unit, 700mm shoulder mounted armor piercing heavy artillery. Combat rating, D level. 2200 points. 2nd generation mecha. Before Yuzio could finish being surprised, the system listed another set of information. Monster name, Demon Shark. Monster type, Type 1, Energy level. 2 monster rating, Strength 5, Agility 8, Defense 4 or 1 mecha after another followed Blue Eagle out of the water, and the creepy roars came one after another. They came from the darkest abyss in the depths of the ocean, and they were monsters that should never see the light of day. Fire. Yuzio knew that fighting was their only choice now. Bang, bang, bang. The shoulder armor of the Scorpion began to deform, and all 8 missile launch holes erupted with bright flames at the same time. The Cobra immediately pulled out the giant energy rifle hanging behind it, and fired 2 shots at the Blue Eagle standing in the front. All 8 chemical missiles hit the heads of the monster mechas without exception, and instantly exploded a series of green pus and metal debris with a fishy smell. The Blue Eagle standing in front of all the monster mechas suddenly flashed to the side, letting the black energy body pass by him. The next second, 2 black energy bodies directly melted a monster mecha covered with seaweed on the spot. Be careful, Blue Eagle's current mobility is completely different from before. When Yuzio finished this sentence, Blue Eagle had adjusted his fighting posture and sprinted straight towards the Scorpion. So fast. Beiying had never seen a mecha that moved so agilely. Blue Eagle's running speed had reached an incredible level, as if it had regarded the huge air resistance as nothing. Even with a buffer distance of 2,000 meters, Beiying and Yuzio could clearly hear the sonic boom caused by the Blue Eagle sprint. Just as Yuzio was about to control the Cobra to fire a second round of shots at the Blue Eagle, several artillery shells suddenly exploded on the Cobra's damaged armor. Warning, 77% of the full body armor is damaged. You can even fire artillery shells. Yuzio looked at the monster mechas with shattered heads, and the latter were ready for the next round of long-range attacks. Fortunately, the anti-energy armor of the Cobra's body has a strong counter-attack against artillery shells. Otherwise the previous artillery shelling would have caused damage to the inside of the body. I'll deal with the Blue Eagle. You go deal with the other monster mechas. Beiying drove crossing Shine towards the Blue Eagle. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.